Hello everyone, and welcome to Techstrong TV. Today is Monday, December 19th, and I hope you're all having a wonderful day so far. I'm your host, William Willis, and in today's show, we're going to bring you some fantastic interviews with incredible guests from around the world. So stay tuned. As always, I'm going to start off with our Techstrong News Recap, filling you in on the biggest tech headlines that are making waves. Then we will head over to Allen, where he will meet with Josef de Vries, Senior Vice President of Product Development at Enterprise DB, to discuss the immediate global availability of EDB tools and extensions release for PostgreSQL 15, which makes it easier than ever for enterprises to deploy Postgres as their enterprise database standard. Then, Allen will speak to Russ Cobb, Chief Marketing Officer at Cobalt, about Cobalt's partnership with NTT Data, a leading managed security service provider, to offer stronger security to clients. We will then air episode 17 of The Open Mainframe. In this episode, hosts Alan Schimmel and John Murtick are joined by Cameron Say of East Carolina University, Missy Decker of Micro Focus, and Maggie Hall of Vienna University to provide more details about the milestones of the COBOL Working Group has achieved, a new research study, and more. Then we go to AWS reInvent, where Alan met with Andre Rawl, Director of Cloud Security at Uptycs, to talk about the Uptycs platform that allows a user to gain visibility into their assets and a risk assessment that will allow a user to remediate security breaches that they may have. Then, at AWS reInvent, Alan met with Ari Paul, Director of Product Marketing at Clumio, to talk about Clumio's announcement of new capabilities that will allow enterprises to protect their AWS data at any scale and recover from disruptions instantly, all while optimizing their cloud costs. Also at AWS reInvent, Alan met with Evan Kaplan, CEO of Influx Data, to share about the latest from Influx Data, including its new storage engine, InfluxDB IOX, which allows users to run unlimited time series workloads and to contextualize data by any dimension. Next up, we're airing episode 3 of our series, Engineering the Change. This series will follow the 3 winners of the Engineering the Change Scholarship Program as they tackle a 10-week intensive coding bootcamp and prepare themselves for careers in software engineering. Then we will have 2 episodes of View with Vizard. In the first episode, Mike interviews API Wiz CEO Rakshith Rayo, as Rakshith explains how low-code tools will be employed to democratize the management of APIs in a way that reduces the misconfigurations that create cybersecurity challenges. Then, Mike interviews Nasuni CTO Andre Rodriguez, as Andre explains why ransomware is running rampant because of existing approaches to data protection are fundamentally broken at a time when the need for cybersecurity resiliency has never been greater. Then we go to Qualys Security Conference 2022, where Alan met with Bharat Jogi, the Director of Vulnerability Threat Research at Qualys, to give an overview of Microsoft Patch Tuesdays, as well as share the most jarring CVEs released and provide an update on Proxy Not Shell. Also at Qualys Security Conference 2022, Alan met with Nathan Rawlings, Senior Director of Vulnerability Management at Elevate Health, to discuss how Qualys Cloud Platform can increase ROI. And that's what we have coming up for you on this episode of Techstrong TV. So without further ado, let's get the show started. Enjoy.
Do you know what you want?
Can we afford this place?
I'm thinking a 1,000-piece Kubernetes, cloud workload protection, and XDR combo.
Yeah, I actually don't see any prices.
Hello, how can I schedule a demo for you today?
So we're on a budget.
Okay.
How much is your 1,000-piece Kubernetes?
What solutions are you currently evaluating?
You don't have to order off that thing.
We don't?
How did you get in here?
Check this out.
Uptycs secret dollar menu.
Order today and you can secure any combo of cloud and endpoint assets through the end of next year. All for $1.
What if I want to secure 100 Mac laptops and 900 Linux servers?
Yeah, $1.
What if I want 500 laptops and 500 Kubernetes nodes? Just $1?
Yep, mix and match to create the combo that works for you.
What about customer support?
Yep, everything for just $1.
We're gonna order off the Uptycs secret dollar menu. And
Seriously, how did you get in here?
Seriously.
Try the Uptycs combo of CNAP and XDR, delivered in a single UI and data model. Just $1 to secure your cloud, containers, and laptops through the end of next year. Offer ends December 31st.
Hi again, everyone. Here are the headlines for December 19th. First up, Microsoft has announced that it will begin rolling out its European Union data boundary plan starting of January 1st next year. For a quick refresher, the EU data boundary plan will allow customers to store and process their data within the EU. To start out, companies that will use Microsoft products will be able to store data in the EU, with plans to expand further to reduce the data flow out of Europe. Microsoft announced this plan in March of this year, in large part due to large European companies that became anxious over customer data with regards to the General Data Protection Regulation. Microsoft hasn't currently offered any details of how this plan will work, but it has said it will publish documentation soon. Next, the U.S. Department of Commerce has announced that it is adding 36 Chinese tech companies to an exports control blacklist. The companies, which range from makers of aviation equipment to chemicals and computer chips, were added to the blacklist, with the U.S. citing national security concerns, human rights, and U.S. interests as a reason for doing so. As part of being on the blacklist, these companies will likely not get export licenses for any U.S. company trying to do business with them. With this move, the U.S. is signaling that it is only going to increase its efforts to prevent China from acquiring advanced technology while building up its own advanced tech. In other news, Meta, AWS, Microsoft, and the mapping company TomTom have formed a new partnership with the Linux Foundation for a mapping initiative. The initiative, the Overture Maps Foundation, will encourage the development of new mapping technology and products that database members can contribute to and reuse. Additionally, the initiative will work towards developing more accurate data that is updated more frequently. And while mapping can seem trivial, it is necessary to power IoT devices such as fitness trackers and autonomous cars. The first data sets of this new initiative are expected to be released in the first half of 2023. Next up, Sony is considering building a new factory for smartphone image sensors in Japan. The factory, which will be built in the Kumamoto prefecture of Japan, is expected to cost Sony multiple billions of dollars and would break ground in 2024. The plant would start to manufacture these image sensors at the earliest in 2025. Just last month, Japan announced it would invest $500 million in its newly formed chip maker, Rapidus. Zooming out, though, as the U.S. has been restricting Beijing's access to semiconductors, Japan has been rushing in to take this opportunity to gain back its lead in chip manufacturing. On Security Boulevard, we have an article looking at how CrowdStrike added an external attack surface management technology to its CrowdStrike Falcon platform. CrowdStrike has stated that this edition aims to provide a comprehensive approach to managing cybersecurity by using a single agent that will reduce costs. To learn more, go to securityboulevard.com. On DevOps.com, we have an article looking at Salesforce's launch of a low-code DevOps Center service on its infrastructure, providing developers with an opinionated platform for building custom applications. Salesforce said that the goal of this service is to make it easier for developers to build applications by using a common source control repository. To learn more, go to devops.com. Finally, on Container Journal, we have an article looking at the learning curve of a new Kubernetes cluster. Kubernetes has changed the age of container orchestration, but with the explosion of Kubernetes came an overwhelming amount of syntax and style issues that has sharpened the learning curve for Kubernetes. This article examines this side of adopting Kubernetes, as well as what can be done to fix it. To learn more, go to containerjournal.com. And that's today's Techstrong News Recap.
ContainerJournal.com is the leading online destination for centralized computing-related content. ContainerJournal.com covers all aspects of software containers, from container management, data management for containers, container security, networking for containers, to the entire container ecosystem, Kubernetes, microservices, serverless, and more. ContainerJournal.com has the largest selection of container-related news, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.containerjournal.com to learn more.
This is Techstrong TV.
Hey everyone, welcome back here to Techstrong TV. We have another guest for you here on Techstrong today. His name is Joseph de Vries, and if I mispronounce it, I apologize. Joseph, would you like to pronounce it?
Sure. Hi everybody, I'm Joseph de Vries.
De Vries, we got it. Joseph is with Enterprise DB, and we're going to learn all about Enterprise DB. But first, Joseph, if you wouldn't mind, give us a little bit of your background.
Yeah, sure. So thanks for the intro. I'm Yosef, as I mentioned, and I run the product engineering organization here at Enterprise DB. Been in the software industry for going on 17, 18 years at this point, and I've been with EDB since the late 2020, since towards the end of 2020. And I came into EDB to kind of grow out and run this development organization. EDB is kind of in the midst of a major growth spurt right now. So there's been a lot of new additions to the company, a lot of efforts to grow our share of the market, and then really double down on the tooling and technologies that we build around the Postgres database offering.
Okay. Well, that was, you kind of segued right into it, so why don't you run with it? Give us a little, what's Enterprise DB about, and what they do.
Yeah, happy to. So I'm sure everybody out there is pretty well familiar with Postgres SQL. It's a database system that's almost 30 years old at this point. It's been open source throughout its existence. And given the longevity that it's been available, it really is designed and quite capable of catering to enterprise workloads. So you take that in mind, and then when we talk about Enterprise DB itself, Enterprise DB is been around since roughly 2005, 2006 timeframe, about a little over 15 years old at this point, and really from its inception has focused on the Postgres technology itself, being part of the community, developing the database server, building tooling for various use cases around lifecycle management of a database system, providing world-class support and services in those environments as well. And particularly in more recent years, building kind of variants of Postgres database technology that allows you to achieve higher degrees of availability. One of its mainstay technologies, really going back to its existence, has been Oracle compatibility as well. Oracle, a big database company as we know it, is also a piece of technology that there are quite a number of customers that are looking for ways to move off of that and move on to new options. So EDB has built a variant of the Postgres server that caters to Oracle compatible workloads to make that migration and then the compatibility of the application itself a much smoother experience in their process to move away from Oracle. So EDB is very much a software company, and the type of tooling and technology that we build both in the database server and around it. And then again, with the professional services and support that we're able to provide to our customer base as well.
Sure. Look, I mean, you and I have both been in the industry a while, but not everyone out in our audience has. SQL technology, of course, kind of became the dominant database form. It's got to be 20, 25 years already, right?
Yeah, right.
And it was also some really great open source SQL database. MySQL was one, and Postgres SQL was another, and they competed with commercial SQL all relational databases.
Yeah.
And then, of course, Oracle bought MySQL years ago, and to me, that was really sort of a golden opportunity for Postgres, because for those people who were using MySQL and kind of were afraid of Oracle shepherding that open source technology, Postgres really did offer a alternative that was not, Larry Ellison owned. And nothing. I'm not making any dispersion. I just call them as I see them.
Yep.
And it really became a very, very viable, more popular probably than it ever had been before. But it needed a company like Enterprise DB, right? It needed a company that said, okay, here's the open source version. You could do a lot with the open source version. It's a great database. But if you're looking for certain enterprise features, or you're looking for Oracle migration paths, or you're looking for sales and support and training and stuff like that, you needed a commercial entity that you don't get just from the open source.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And, I think what's been really special for EDB in the last 3-4 years or so is this popularity around Postgres in the market has just become so strong and so prominent. And while there are, a number of companies out there providing support and services for the Postgres technology in various ways, EDB has really kind of doubled down on this growth trajectory that the Postgres technology itself is undergoing, and has put a lot of investment in building out our company to really, cater to these market demands. As we look across, every hyperscaler out there has a Postgres offering. There's another dozen or so Postgres as a service variants out there today. EDB is acknowledged this growth and has been making these significant investments. We bought a Postgres company at the end of 2020, a company called Second Quadrant. That acquisition brought into our portfolio a set of capabilities, in particular one we refer to as Postgres Distributed, or what used to be known as bidirectional replication. This allows for active geo-distributed workloads for those higher degrees of availability. It brought with that acquisition a number of really smart and capable engineers and PS professionals that have helped us grow our presence in the community. Fastly following in 2021, we launched our own cloud offering. We have capabilities for running Postgres in Kubernetes-based environments. So we really also recognize all the different ways that our users are using the Postgres database technology, and are building tools and offerings to support those different kind of workloads as well.
Before we hop into the news around the latest release, in that vein, an interesting thing I've kind of discovered by accident is, we interview a lot of different companies here, and there's a lot of different databases. There's the whole NoSQL crowd, there's graph databases, and there's time series databases, and there's new database kind of technology coming out. I was surprised to learn that a lot of them actually work pretty well with the SQL. A lot of them actually have an SQL backend, and then they have other stuff on top, right?
Right.
I'm wondering if you're seeing that at Enterprise DB, if you're working with other some of these newer database technologies.
Well, what we do see a lot in the industry and across the landscape are Postgres compatible offerings. Mm-hmm. So it may not be Postgres at the core, or maybe a forked version of Postgres that then the company will build its unique value proposition out of, and then position that Postgres compatible API as something that satisfies, that user who wants to bring their pre-existing Postgres workload into their service. And, there's certainly something commendable about that. But I think there's also risk for users who take that too lightly, and might be sufficient if it's a net new application that they're building. But if they ever want to move to another Postgres offering, they're going to start to see that incompatibility underneath the API, underneath the service quickly. And it's also not the most seamless of migrations either. So there are a lot of companies out there doing things that adhere to and claim Postgres API compatibility. And then there are companies that are building technology that can extend Postgres itself, time series, for example. There's a lot of time series-based workload that can run out of Postgres without having to buy a specialized offering. Postgres also supports multiple data types too. So, to your comments around the NoSQL space, we can build search indexes. We can support JSON data types. It's quite a multimodal set of capabilities that are available in Postgres too.
Great. All right.
Yeah.
We spent enough time kind of just talking here, Joseph. Let's jump into the news you wanted to share with our audience.
Yeah, so we just announced the Postgres 15 tools release a couple weeks ago. This is following the community release of V15 that went out in October timeframe. And as you've kind of heard me speak to quite a bit already, there's a lot of software technology that we develop in support of users who run Postgres database. And so this release is, we introduced new capabilities to support LDAP synchronization between users' LDAP servers and the Postgres user identity management capabilities. We released the first set of a series of advanced storage pack extensions that help users for specific workload types achieve higher performance results in running those workloads. So there's a couple of those extensions that we put out in market. And one of the other capabilities that is included in this release is something we call Postgres Tuner. It's the first release of this technology, and ultimately, databases are hard, and maintaining a state and a configuration for those databases that is most optimized for your workloads is also a very hard thing to do. So at EDB, we've really leveraged decades of expertise across our professional services team, our development team, and our support team to take kind of our best practice configurations and automate those. We've built it into an extension that can run in a customer's environment, dynamically monitor the behavior of the database, and then make these configuration changes to get better performance out of the database in support of that. So this is a very exciting part of the release that we're going to be putting a lot more into in subsequent releases. Another very exciting part of the release is a rev to our Kubernetes offering. Kubernetes is an open source technology that has become quite popular in the industry these days. A lot of developers out there running workloads in that ecosystem. And there isn't a broad set of options for database providers delivering operators for these environments. And this is a technology we've had in market for about a year and a half. That allows our customers to really run enterprise-grade workloads on Postgres in their Kubernetes environment. So this is a rev to that product. We introduced support for connection pooling, which is a very common use case in a traditional Postgres environment, and continued iterating towards bringing in the capabilities that do allow for production workloads in Kubernetes-based environments. So all in all, it's an exciting release, and it's really leading up to our advanced server and PGD release that we have planned for the beginning of the new year, where there will be new capabilities, a new set of features in our Postgres distributed offering. It will also be the first release in which we provide TDE support, something that has not existed in Postgres, and will now be available in EDB's database distributions. So that will also be a very exciting release in the next couple of months.
Very cool. Joseph, for our users out there who say, maybe we should be looking into Postgres. What we have now, we're not thrilled with. It's expensive. It's whatever. What's kind of the typical on-ramp? You think go download like the open source Postgres, play with it, so you understand some of those kind of basic kind of stuff? Or are you better off just going right to the Enterprise DB?
Especially with this new release.
They're all welcome to come to us first. But my objective recommendation would be for a user out there who's not yet familiar with Postgres, heard a lot about it, has need for strong consistency, strong availability of the database system, is to go try a cloud offering. It's low cost. It can be provisioned on demand. There's a lot of them out there, including Enterprise DB's Big Animal. A lot of these Postgres as a service offerings come with a free trial, so it can be a zero cost investment to begin learning the offering. And that on-ramp, as you put it just becomes much more level off. That time to value can be expedited, from months down to days to weeks. We're always encouraging folks to go download Postgres, go through the docs, set it up themselves. But when we think about how the industry is shifting towards the cloud these days anyways, and I think in a lot of cases, these individuals that you're citing as a reference are not DBAs. They don't want to deal with infrastructure management. They just want to connect to a database and understand how it works and how to use it. Cloud offerings out there are going to be the easiest way for them to do so.
I love it. People want to get more information from Enterprise DB. Where do they go?
EnterpriseDB.com.
That's
Plenty
easy.
of information on there.
Yep.
Joseph, I want to thank you for coming on Techstrong TV, telling us all about this new release, as well as, kind of setting the foundation here about Postgres in general and the Enterprise DB as a company. Come back, keep us posted. You said you have the new one coming out in a few months. Well, hopefully we'll see you then.
That'd be great. Thank you, Alan. It's nice talking to you.
All right. Enterprise DB here on Techstrong TV. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back.
This is Techstrong TV.
Hey, welcome back to Techstrong TV. Our next guest on Techstrong is from our good friends at Cobalt, Cobalt.io. the world leader in kind of pen test as a service, if you will. I want to introduce you to Russ Cobb. Russ is the CMO over at Cobalt. And though we've had Caroline Wong and various Cobalt folks over the years here on Techstrong TV, I'm not sure Russ has ever been on. Russ, welcome to Techstrong.
Hey, thanks so much, Alan. I appreciate you having a first-time guest.
I appreciate you being on. So, Russ, look, Cobalt's a technical company, so I would expect their CMO to be pretty technical. Why don't you before we jump into today's news and Cobalt, why don't we talk a little bit about Russ?
Oh, okay. Well, thanks very much. So, yes, a little bit technical, although I will not hold a candle to Caroline, as your audience would probably recognize. My background is in data analysis, data integration, all things related to data governance, privacy, things of that nature. And then most recently in the security space, not just with Cobalt, but with an NDR provider previously. So, I definitely understand all the concepts that we're talking about. But, again, don't put me up next to Caroline. She'd show me up.
Yeah, no, there aren't many people you could put up next to Caroline, frankly. Yeah. But, the important thing I want the audience to get out of it is, look, from time to time, we do interview CMOs or VP product marketing. Yeah. And people shouldn't be lulled or fooled into thinking because of someone's title they don't have a technical background. So many CMOs I know have hundreds, if not thousands, of line of code committed in products they've worked on over the years, or have very technical, engineering type degrees and have spent a lot of time on that side of the house before moving, into the business side of things like that. Yeah. And just wanted to get that out of the way. Russ, let's talk a little bit about Cobalt, right? I mentioned, worldwide leader. I think I made that up, or I might have heard it somewhere, in pen testing as a service. But I imagine you have a better, smoother description.
Yeah, no, I think worldwide leader is good. So I appreciate you giving us that designation. The analyst firms, the Gartners, Forresters, et cetera, of the world haven't yet come out with their, wave or magic quadrants where they go in and they create that space, so to speak. We do have relationships with them. We talk a lot about pen testing in the overall context of vulnerability management, but they haven't done that yet. I would say, G2 is probably the best place to go. That's customers that go and actually put their own recommendations on. And so in that one, we continue to show up as the leader. So I'll link it to your comment and just say, yes, we're the worldwide leader in PTAS. We were the first, and I think we're still the leading.
Absolutely. Very cool. All right. And I mentioned right off the bat, Cobalt.io is the website. And so all things related to Cobalt, people can get there. Yeah. Russ, one of the things we've seen Cobalt embark on over the last months, year, maybe more, is, this evolution from taking this, rather novel idea of pen test as a service and selling that direct to customers to building out partners, a partnership channel. And, look, that I think is in the normal course of business, this is what companies do. It's a force multiplier. Mm-hmm. And Cobalt's no different. They've been working on a channel strategy for a while now, and recently you guys made a pretty significant announcement.
We did. You're referencing NTT security, right? So, that was a big. You said for the last months, years, hasn't quite been a year, but certainly it's been a major effort of ours during 2022, since round about the beginning of the second quarter. A huge shout out to Sushila Nair. She's the VP of cybersecurity for NTT Data Services and their security group. And she's been, I would say, the sponsor and the driving force within NTT to bring this partnership to the market. So definitely a shout out to her. You're right. We've been a direct to customer, enterprise all the way down to small companies provider now for 5-6 years, and really hadn't spent a whole lot of time thinking about what does a channel look like and what does a channel look like for clients that we can't reach now, and obviously what would it mean for our business. And so we started a partner program actually last year. I would say it was more smaller scale partners, and mostly in a referral motion. So they would run across a pen testing need, doing a compliance audit as an example, toss it over to us, and then we would work with the client directly. NTT is really different for us because it is the first time that we have set up what I'd call an indirect channel relationship with an MDR provider. And increasingly, we are looking at the MSP or MSSP or MDR, right? Pick your acronym, but the market of providers who are actually providing in-use security services to their client base. NTT is the 11th largest global MDR provider. And so it's one of the reasons that when Sushila approached me, it was, yeah, absolutely, we're going to put a lot of energy into this and we're going to see what we can put together. And worked at it, continued progressing the ball. And then early October, we finished the relationship and we're ready to announce it. So I think that's the press release that you had referenced earlier.
Sure. So, look, I've done my share. You know, I was VP Biz Dev, Corp Dev, Chief Strategy Officer of companies. Done my share of these kinds of relationships. You know, when we talk channel like this, though, there's many ways to skin the cat, right? One is, you know, strictly a reseller. So NTT resells Cobalt services, and you know, sometimes Cobalt has a sales overlay that matches with the NTT sales team, and they go to market together. Other times it's more of a marketing situation where we're going to, you know, do some joint marketing activities to stimulate the market and see among our common customers, you know, what we or maybe new customers, what we can, you know, get going, dig up. Other times it's very much a two-way street, you know, more of a strategic kind of relationship, where both parties are offering services from each other. How would you categorize this one, Russ?
So I think there are elements of all those things you mentioned in it. But this is much more of an MDR provider using our platform and our Cobalt core and the methodologies that they bring to bear to deliver direct services to their end-use clients. So, as an example, they have in their security practice information security managers, ISMs for short, and they are the people who face off against a client CISO and security operations team to architect what their security posture is going to look like and to architect the products and services that NTT will provide to them. In our relationship, the ISMs will actually be the ones who will be responsible for the operational delivery of pen tests to their clients on the Cobalt platform. And so that is very much of a force multiplier for us, to use one of your earlier phrases, because it allows us to reach a client base that honestly, we wouldn't have the access to, and we probably wouldn't want to invest the time, energy, and money to trying to reach. It's a very effective way for us to reach the market, but it's also a very effective way for NTT's end-use client base to get best-in-class technology from a PTAS perspective. So they will actually be on the platform, NTT professionals, actually scoping, working with the Cobalt core to operationally deliver a pen test on our platform. So for us, that was, as we worked through the relationship and the agreement, that was great validation of the value that is in our platform. We are excited. We're rapidly approaching 1 million hours of testing on our platform. So, you know, the analogy of do something for 10,000 hours, you'll be an expert. We have that and then some. And so I think that's one thing that Sushila and her team recognized when they got into the platform, understood the pen testing approaches and methods that are codified in that. They saw how quickly it would integrate with their clients, some of their DevOps practices and systems like Jira from a ticketing perspective. So they grasped that very quickly. And so that's I would say the core of the relationship. They will market to their client base. We'll obviously help them in market and pre-sales when we need to. But then they will take over operational delivery of it and kind of free us up to deal with with our customers in a direct way.
So that's interesting. So they're going to take over operational delivery. So there's not like a Cobalt. So look, in deals I've done like this in the past, right, you got to match up Salesforce to Salesforce, territory to territory, customer to customer, and have that meeting of the minds and meeting of the flesh, right? As you go to market. It sounds here like you're teaching them to fish and sending them out with their rods and poles to fish.
Yeah, that's a great analogy for it. I agree with that. I think there will be instances where we'll go to market more of a sell with motion because we have enterprise customers as well and some upper mid-market customers that we might have overlapping client bases. And so when we reach those situations, obviously we want to go to the client together. But the intent of it is for them to be able to, again, work on the platform, take our offering into their client base. We will help where we need to. Again, right now we're doing a lot of enablement sessions in their service delivery team, as well as in their overlay sales team, who goes and works with their industry leaders and their end use clients. So we're doing enablement now, but the intent is very much teach them to fish, provide them behind the curtain operational support where they need it, but then let them validate the use of that platform and the new PTAS delivery to their client base.
From a branding perspective, though, do the NTT customers know that it's Cobalt?
They do, yeah. So that's a huge benefit to us as well. Obviously, being kind of co-branded with one of the largest MDR providers. So when we generate the report, if it's a compliance report or even in our new, so one of the offerings that we launched the beginning of October called Agile Pen Testing. It is not compliance oriented. It is intended more for the DevOps or DevSecOps, right? It's targeting more of the developer community. So it's when you're not trying to go through a compliance checklist, but you do have innovation and application, and you want to test that for security vulnerabilities early before you get it to market, maybe even in a beta test. And so Agile is something that we launched that is really targeting them. So what NTT will do is work on our platform, deliver it to their client base, and again, we'll provide support, if and when we need to.
Excellent. Russ, I don't want to give people the impression this is a one-trick pony, NTT is your only partner. You have been doing this now since, I think you said Q2.
Yeah.
And you have other partners. Can we give people a sense of the breadth of partners?
Sure. So we have, if I looked across our portfolio of what I would consider to be active partners, we have 120 globally. Those sit in a couple of different segments. Compliance platforms tends to be one of the key ones. And certainly from a compliance, even a GRC perspective in the market, there's lots of companies that have generated platforms. They try to streamline the process for their client base. So we have a lot of relationships for companies that would fall into that product market. They're working with the client base. They have an overall compliance program. They get to a point where it's time to do a compliance pen test, and they don't do pen testing themselves. And so they would refer that over to us. And then similarly, what we're trying to do with our own sales organization is help them understand how to discover and qualify opportunities for our partner base and make that a reciprocal relationship so that as we are identifying opportunities that might not be fit for purpose for what we do, we can very efficiently throw those to a partner and help their business along the way.
Sounds great. In terms of the 100 plus partners out there, geographically speaking, or is it worldwide, or is it mostly North America, EMEA?
Definitely North America and EMEA. We have a couple that would be in the Asia Pacific region, but as a company, we're primarily focused in North America, so US, Canada, and then in Western Europe, in UK. the English always want me to make sure that the English are separate from the rest of Europe. So I try to make sure that
I think they
that.
had a vote on that recently. But
They had a small vote on that, yes. Yeah. But we primarily work in Western Europe and UKI, and then in US and Canada. And our partners cover that same geographic territory. Although, again, we sometimes have inbound interest coming out of Asia Pacific, primarily Australia, New Zealand area. And so we have some partners down there as well that we do business with. And in some cases, they help with delivery services, given the time zone difference.
Sure. Hey, Russ, let me ask you a question. If someone's watching this out there and says, I'd like to add this to our lineup, our line card, how would you recommend them going about to become a Cobalt partner?
Mm-hmm. So, all right. So you appreciate you giving our URL at the outset. So go to cobalt.io. We actually have a partner page on there where you can contact us. You can do it electronically, pretty easy form fill. And then we will get back to you. I try to make our service level within 48 hours. That's the same service level with which we will start a pen test for a client. So I like to try to tell our potential partners we'll be back to you within 48 hours. And then we'll just have a discussion. We'll get on a Zoom call. We'll try to understand your business model, your business objectives. If you have a technology based offering, so we're working with some potential breach and attack simulation, some potential BAS partners now. So we'll try to understand your technology and then put together a comprehensive plan for whatever level of technology integration we want to try to drive. And then whatever integration of the business model we want to drive as well. And that could be kind of that referral partnership. It could be a sell with, where we go into certain client bases or certain geographies jointly. Or, increasingly, it could be that we want to set up a resell or a MSP, MSSP, MDR relationship if that happens to be your business model. So I would say, go to the website, do a quick form fill. We'll be back to you within 48 hours. And then we can go through a pretty efficient process for determining if and then what kind of partnership makes the most sense between us.
Great. Hey, Russ, I want to thank you for coming on here and telling us about this exciting new relationship with NTT, as well as the whole partner program. Don't be a stranger now that you've been here. Come on back and keep us posted.
Yeah, well, Alan, again, I appreciate you having a first-time guest on who does not necessarily sit in the security operations area. So I very much appreciate that. And would love to come back on as we get into 2023, talk a little bit about the new innovations that we're pushing out with and without partners in some cases. And also maybe we can reflect on what's actually happening in 2023. All the things everyone's putting out their predictions right now. And so it'll be interesting to maybe visit again in 6 months and look back at the predictions and see what's actually come true.
We do a virtual event every year in January called Predict, where we have people making their predictions. Yeah. I can't tell you how many times I'm tempted to run last year's
predictions. And then grade them.
I think that'd be a great plan.
I have about 4 or 5 years of it, so it would be interesting.
Anyway, hey, say hello to Caroline and the rest of the team. Best of luck, as we head into the holiday season here, and we'll have you on in 2023.
That sounds great. Alan, thanks again. I appreciate it. Take care.
All righty. Russ Cobb, Cobalt.io here on Techstrong.
Thanks,
We're going to take a break. We'll be right back. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of The Open Mainframe. The Open Mainframe is a monthly video series produced by us here at Techstrong TV, in partnership with our friends at the Open Mainframe Project, part of the Linux Foundation. And we've been doing it now over a year, almost maybe a year and a half. And every month we explore a new topic of relevance or some news, happenings of what's going on in the open mainframe world, which is a pretty diverse and ever-expanding world, it seems. This month's show is titled COBOL, our past, present, and future. And after being informed by one of our panel members, I feel obliged to say that, look, at a recent open mainframe conference, which I think was in Philadelphia a couple months ago, there was a session by a similar name discussing, some of what we're going to discuss today, but not all of it. And, unfortunately, if you weren't at the conference, you may not have caught it. But not to worry, if you're watching this, you'll have a great chance to get caught up and more.
Yeah, Alan, the slides are available, and I believe a recording of that session are available as well. So
absolutely,
encourage
you could
people to
probably
check
get
that
it
out.
up on the Open Mainframe Project website. So, yep, I wanted to say that off the bat. But let me introduce you to our panel today, because they actually represent the working group, or the COBOL working group, as part of Open Mainframe Project Linux Foundation. And we're happy as heck to have them here with us. Let me first introduce you to Misty Decker. Misty spoke up about the panel in Philly. And of course, Misty's been a guest a few times on our show for various topics, but happy to have you back, Misty. I hope all is well.
Oh, definitely. Thank you. It's always a delight, Alan.
How about a little background to share with our audience?
Oh, sure. I've been in the mainframe space for over 30 years, and I am the director of product marketing at Micro Focus, and I do a lot with mainframe modernization, which includes COBOL and bringing COBOL to the latest and greatest technologies. I also serve as the chair of the new mainframe modernization working group for the Open Mainframe Project, and I'm on the governing board for the OMP. So I'm a little busy.
Yeah, entwined in here. It's great to have you back on, Misty. Next up, another repeat panel member on our team. He's the academic, or one of the academians in the group. It's Cameron, or Cam Say. I think as his family pronounces it. Cam, did I get that right?
Absolutely, you did, Alan. Good to be with you.
I tried to give a little background, but you could do better than me. Would you mind sharing with our audience a little bit about you?
Yeah, my name is Cameron Say. I proudly hail from Durham, North Carolina. I've been an academic since 2004. I was in IT for 21 years before that. I currently serve with Misty as on the Open Mainframe Project Governing Board. I'm an adjunct professor at East Carolina University teaching mainframe. I've taught mainframe at 5 universities. I'm very active in this space and I enjoy it. So glad to be. Always good to be with this august body.
All right. So here we are. I don't know if I'd call him august, but okay, I'll go with it, Cam. Our next our third panel member is Margaret Hall. And Margaret, I'm going to let you kind of give your background, if it's okay with you.
Of course. So I'm Dr. Maggie Hall. I'm also a researcher. I've been in academia for about 10 years, so I'm nice and in the tower at this point. But I'm not a mainframer. I am mainframe adjacent, I call it. I run a workforce development research project that is looking to bolster the mainframe talent market, and that's where I come into this project.
And I can't see it clearly because my eyes aren't that good, but which university are you with there? In the
oh, yes, sorry, I forgot to put my, I'm at the Business and Economics University of Vienna, or the VU Vienna.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And then last but certainly not least is my co-host. here on the Open Mainframe Project. So he does every one of these with me. We drag him in. John Murdoch, he's also the ED or General Manager for the Open Mainframe Project from Linux Foundation. John, how are you?
I am doing excellent, Alan. Excited to kind of talk about COBOL, which is something you don't get every single person off the street coming to say, but there's some really cool stuff coming in here, and I know this is a space you have a lot of interest in as well. So I'm excited for this conversation.
You know, I'll tell you something, guys, so you know. I've been doing, I started DevOps.com, and I've been running DevOps.com since we first published it in March of 2014. So it's 8 years now. And I'm going on almost 9. Do you know the single biggest article in terms of views we've ever had was around the modernization of COBOL? Which boggles my mind, because we're DevOps.com, darn it. But yet it gives you an idea of, there's a lot of people out there who are interested in this and do care, and it's a pretty popular subject. So I guess, guys, to get started, folks, let's kind of lay a foundation. The COBOL Working Group. What's its charter? What does it do? What can we tell the audience about it?
That one's definitely
Misty?
you, Cam, is our chair. Cam is our chair.
Oh, Cam,
Yeah, well,
Cam, you're the chair.
I'm just a loud participant.
Misty is kind of a de facto co-chair, but and Maggie, you become a mainframer by hanging out with mainframers. That's what you're doing. That's how you become a mainframer. So
You have been assimilated.
You are in fact a mainframer. Yeah. So, Alan, the idea for the working group, I think, and Derek and I never really can get clear about the occurrence of this, the chronology of it, but I'm pretty sure it was his idea. I'm pretty sure it was started by an email from Derek Britton to me about that I think this was a good idea. And I immediately, because it so soon was, as soon as he said it was a great idea, that, I didn't, but I don't think I came up. I may have, but I don't think I did. I think it was Derek's idea. But immediately we put it together, and we had kind of different objectives initially. I wanted to get COBOL back in the academic curriculum, right? Because it's not there. So that was my overarching goal. Derek wanted to do more of a reconnaissance mission, fact finding and fact gathering in a kind of an organized, respectable way, which I thought was a splendid idea. So our first real task was Phil Toplitsky had a survey that he was going to give to the industry that was about COBOL, but it was about COVID. Has COVID interfered with your COBOL development, your COBOL processes? Well, we took that idea and said, Phil, that's a great idea. We want to expand it. So we fleshed out some questions, about 15 or 20 questions that we sent out to industry about their COBOL use, right? Mm-hmm. And we got 272 respondents. Now, we did some very conservative extrapolations. On this project, Reg Harbeck, Derek Britton, Misty Decker, a couple other people that have very good analytical tools. So, we know how to run data. We know how to look at data. So we came up with some very conservative assumptions and estimates and extrapolations, and we came out with a figure we would come with of 200 plus lines of COBOL out there active, because I'd heard that figure kicked around for years, but nobody could validate it. Nobody could find out where that came from. So we said, okay, we're going to try to establish it. So by our data, it's a pretty good number, and by Misty's, by Microsoft folks' later survey, it's a little bit low. So that's where we are now. This current iteration, and Maggie and I have been knowing each other. We've been working on another project together, and we came with the idea of doing a scholarly study on this stuff, getting it into the scholarly literature where it has not been. I'm an academic, so I know that there's a paucity of scholarly literature about COBOL and COBOL use. So she did that. So that's where we are now. So that brings us up to date. There's a lot of gaps I left in there, but that's the big picture in the interest of time.
And I can only support Cam was saying, even already in 2014 about the academic community was saying, hey, look, only 1 in 4 universities in the States are teaching COBOL. This is a problem. And we've done exactly no things since then. So,
absolutely. Misty?
Yeah, no, first of all, I want to say that there has been a lot of work done, but by IBM, by Broadcom, by these vendors, it hasn't been really industry-wide, industry agnostic until the Open Mainframe Project got really involved. And I did a keynote at the OMP Summit about the current state of COBOL education. It's also available on YouTube. Nice little plug there. It's nice and short too, because they made me do an entire hour-long keynote in 20 minutes. So it's really punchy.
Absolutely.
But there has been a lot of work done in this space, but it just really hasn't seemed to move the needle. And the research done by Vance and Bourne, sponsored by Micro Focus, that came out about a year ago, found 800 billion lines of code. It's massive, the amount of COBOL that's out there, but it's really generally stable code. So it flies under the radar because it just works and they don't need to do anything with it. But that survey found that, I'm going to throw a few numbers at you if you don't mind, I prepared. 83% of the people working on COBOL right now believe that those applications are going to continue to persist long after they retire. And 92% of those organizations say that those COBOL applications are absolutely strategic to their business. And 41%, so not quite half, say that most new business projects need integration into their current COBOL applications. So even the fancy smancy stuff that gets in the paper all the time, the AI or whatever, still has to integrate with these COBOL applications. They're not just shoved off in the corner and abandoned and forgotten. That's why this code continues to grow and why these applications continue to remain strategic. 92% say that they're strategic. They're absolutely the heart of most of these large organizations. And that's what we're trying to do is bring awareness. When something just kind of works, you forget about it. And it takes people like us to say, hey, take a look at this solid bedrock, this strong foundation that you've been walking on all this time. And that actually leads us to Maggie's research, which I'm super excited about. Maggie, why don't you tell us the unique angle that you took on this?
So my interest in the community is fully in a supportive role. How can I possibly make all of these projects that I'm working on supportive of the COBOL community? So the question that we asked the last time around was, why not COBOL in a lot of ways? Why would you advise somebody not to jump into COBOL as a career? So what are your major misconceptions, basically? So we call this the misconception survey. And we sent it out to the entire group. And we asked them to give us ranked up to 5 reasons of why they would not recommend COBOL. And we came out with a really, really nice selection of answers, but there were sort of 5 big ones, 4 big ones maybe that we want to talk about. And the first one, you would expect that it was COBOL is dead. And it wasn't COBOL is dead. It's in fact that COBOL is the major misconception about the community is that COBOL is outdated. So COBOL is dead. It definitely came up. It came up actually just after that. But the major misconception that people hear and that is a reason that they would not recommend a colleague or a junior person coming up into the COBOL field is that COBOL is such an outdated code, that it's such an outdated technology to go into the mainframe that it's not worth doing anymore. And that just flies straight into the face of what Misty was just talking about, right? It's literally the opposite of what's on the ground, what's happening, what we're seeing in industry today. So we, on the one hand, know that COBOL is this absolutely strategic, foundational, and critical business operation. On the other hand, we're telling ourselves, we're telling other people that it's not worth doing. And as an academic, I find that super problematic from you as the industry folks, but also I found it problematic for my own community, because that's why, and that when I was saying that we've done absolutely nothing, to make that more specific, we've not continued teaching COBOL. We've not even introduced new courses. That stubborn number of 1 out of 4 universities are teaching this language. It's staying there, and that's not moving. And actually, I know of a couple of universities that would have explicitly told me they're not going to introduce it because one reason or the other. So that should be really concerning, because you have to go to, if you're not in one of CAM's programs, right? Or if you're not up in Poughkeepsie where you can go to Marist, it's really hard to get a formal program. I think there's one program in Michigan maybe that teaches. Sorry, and then we'll go into the other ones. The other 3 reasons that people have common misconceptions, or they list the common misconceptions about COBOL being, is that it's really hard to learn, which again is one of those tricky items. If you're not used to something, everything that's new is hard. But COBOL was really meant for people who aren't computer scientists. It's a business language. And if you have somebody who can read up to the 7th or 8th grade level, you have somebody who can read COBOL, because the verbs and the syntax are so similar to written English that it was done that way purposefully for people who don't get computer science training, right? In 1959 and 1962, when these things are starting to run out, you didn't get computer science training for secretaries. It wasn't a good investment at that point. So it had to be simple enough that anyone could pick it up. And that hasn't changed, but it's this giant misconception that people see themselves. Of course, COBOL is dead that was the 3rd most common, even though rather the opposite is true. And the last one, and this one is where it really hurts my heart, is that people think that a big misconception about COBOL is that it is a bad career choice. And that's completely the opposite of what I'm doing in my project. I'm sponsored by the National Science Foundation in the United States to work on workforce development for the mainframe sector. So when I hear do not go into the mainframe, do not go into COBOL, don't learn this language, it's not worth it because it's a bad career choice, it's going to hurt your career. Oh, it just doesn't make any sense. So doesn't get it. And it hurts my heart, because there's never a bad time to learn a critical language. And with all of the rest of the misconceptions that we have, we're shooting ourselves in the foot a little bit here as the academic community, but also in the industry community. We're creating some barriers here to our own success in and perpetuating these sort of misconceptions that we have.
I don't disagree with anything you said, Maggie. I mean, look, here's the fact. I've been in tech a couple of years myself, and there's no doubt that we suffer from shiny trinket syndrome in technology. Everybody wants to know what and work on what's the latest and greatest, especially this time of year. My inbox is flooded with every vendor and every university and every person telling me, would you like to hear what I think my predictions are for 2023 are? Because everyone has that crystal ball and they all want to be on top of the next new fad, the next shiny new thing, the next magic bullet. And in doing so, most of them have the attention span. They can't concentrate on more than one thing at a time for a lot of them. And so you tend to throw out the babies with the bathwater in yesterday's garbage, not recognizing, Misty, as you pointed out right from the get-go, which is, out of this study, how much of the world still runs on COBOL-based applications. We found it out early in the pandemic. All of a sudden, we had a run on unemployment in New Jersey or wherever the heck it was. And we need to update that unemployment system so people get checks and can make claims and can put food on the table. And man, we don't have enough COBOL programmers to do the updates, so people suffer.
Well,
Right.
the truth on that one, Alan, is that it actually wasn't COBOL, was not the issue. It wasn't. I mean, there's a certain state. So I know the people who work on the system, and they told me the inside scoop. It was actually the browser, the website couldn't handle the traffic. And then once they solved that problem, their network couldn't handle the traffic. And once they solved that problem, then they needed to update their COBOL application. But the initial issue when they made the call for COBOL programmers wasn't the issue. So I think that's evidence of how COBOL, everybody thinks it's a unique problem, but it's not. It's the same problems that you have anywhere else. You just latch onto that to feed into your existing biases against COBOL and justify it, right?
So what you're saying is it should have been a call for like Java or PHP programmers instead.
It should have been a call for
Infrastructure.
maintaining your applications in the first place.
No, it's infrastructure and capacity. I'm sorry.
It is. Yeah. It is. And being prepared for a dynamic environment, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm saying that all completely in jest, by the way, but it is a very valid point. So, there are hundreds of programming languages out there. Many of the ones that are most popular out there have been around for decades. Yet, from what I can tell, COBOL's the only one that sort of gets singled out in this sort of unhappy camp, in this sort of like, this is bad. Like we've had C applications that have probably been running for 2 or 3 decades. We have, stuff in various functional languages that are probably that. Yet the COBOL stuff is what gets called out. Why is that? Like, what is your take of why that is?
No. Well, first hand up, I think goes to Misty. But Maggie, you're up next.
I've written on this one extensively, and it's a big passion of mine. One of my other hobbies is diversity and inclusion and unconscious bias. And one of the talks that I do at conferences is called Unconscious Bias Affects Technologies as Well as People. And the history of COBOL, as Maggie explained, it's easily readable and understandable by the layperson. It was meant for secretaries and accountants with no background to be able to create business applications. You now get an industry of professionally trained programmers. There's an unconscious feeling that they're better than that they're better than COBOL. Because C is more complicated, it gives you the feeling that it's more sophisticated and more worthy of your talents. My opinion.
I will tell you from a security perspective, between C and C#, none of the developers I know want to be developing in that anymore. I mean, there's also all these new modern languages that they all sort of, gravitate towards. But, I mean, those languages have, I would say COBOL has stood the test of time much better than maybe C or C# has. Maggie, you had your hand up second. I promised you a chance, so I got to turn it over to you.
It's okay. I think I can bring the 2 points together, both to how we view COBOL, but also to its ability to stand the test of time. I'll go back to the fact that this is a business language, and that's really squarely where I see this problem that John pointed out coming up. Computer science languages are good for computer scientists, and we train computer scientists in university, and they go off and they create computer science, right? Business languages don't have that same level of prestige. So a business language like COBOL is always going to be just a little bit second class in an opinion of a computer scientist, even if that's really not true. If the applications outlive their development teams, if it stands the test of time. A language that is highly readable, highly accessible, highly trainable, and also continues to do its job well, which is, I think, a point that keeps coming back up with all of us, shouldn't be so poorly viewed, but it is definitely seen as out of touch. It's seen as a marker of out of demand skills. And a lot of that comes back to, this is not one of ours, right? This is a business language. This isn't a computer science language. And that's just mind-boggling in some ways. But when I see coming out of that, I tend to be in technology schools. That's really what I see coming out of the colleagues.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, computer scientists.
Misty's point, it's and I would like some feedback from the panel about this, because I've never really been able to figure this one out. There's no logic behind it. But to the extent that COBOL is taught, it is taught much more frequently in computer science departments than it is in colleges of business. Now, I don't understand that, because COBOL is a business technology. And
I don't agree with that.
It's what I've seen. It's what I've seen. It's true at East Carolina.
Okay. So that's interesting, because when I led IBM's academic initiative program, right, and we had universities around the world, it was usually the information systems departments that would sponsor and support COBOL. And I struggled to get the computer science department. So it was pretty rare. I had multiple deans of computer science departments, even after I explained to them the importance of the language, the value of the language, the importance to their business sponsors, their local businesses that they try to build a pipeline of talent for. I brought those businesses in to talk to the deans of computer science. They still declined to teach it. And when they were being honest with me, they would say, I just don't enjoy it.
Yeah, and see, I kind of understand it now. I know two of those programs you work with at Arkansas and at Robert Morris. They were definitely school of business, but that was because they had a critical mass of mainframe people there. I'm telling you, from what I've seen, Misty, in the schools that I've worked at 5 universities, the colleges of business never understand that it's business technology. In more cases, I've taught in computer science departments. I taught at Tennessee State, at Alcorn, and at A&T. I'm in college engineering. I'm not in school of business. And at North Carolina Central. Now, at North Carolina Central, I'm in the school of business. I don't understand it. I know I understand what you're saying, but now I'll tell you what, I can support that rationale to this extent. You can have a legitimate computer science program that is valid and accredited and an outstanding program without ever mentioning the word mainframe. You can do that with a computer science department. I would submit to you, you cannot have a complete discussion of business technology and information technology without discussing COBOL. You can't. The conversation is incomplete. It's incomplete. Why that's not commonly understood, I don't know. But to me, that's factual. It is business technology. You can exclude it from engineering and computer science and IT with no problem, except for complete program. You cannot exclude it from information systems department, in my opinion. And I don't understand that logic. I don't understand.
IS it operates in a weird space. It's halfway between business and computer science. So it'll depend on which university you're at, where it actually is housed. And in some of the programs, you'll get it. So at the University of Nebraska, where I was previous to this, it was in the College of Information Science and Technology, whereas in other programs, you're going to find it in the business school. And that's probably the split that we're seeing there.
Yeah. And you know, I want to keep it on topic but this is related. I lost my train of thought. It'll come back to me. I lost my train of thought, but I want to know. I'm old.
But I agree with it. I agree with bringing it in the business school, because that's where I'm at right now, right? And one of the classes I have in my circuit is cybersecurity. So how do I manage cybersecurity? I'm not teaching business students to be cyber engineers, right? That's insanity. But they're going to need to know how to run these teams. And if you can't even approach your mainframe, and we all know it's there, if you can't even approach your mainframe, if you don't have a good common sense about it and what it takes to keep the thing living, your cybersecurity efforts are out the window from the very first space.
Yeah,
I think this is a really interesting train of thought, but it kind of goes to what the next round of research is, right? The next round of research is really looking at that. How do we understand those those misconceptions, right? So what is the future of COBOL? Everything that we've really done is we looked at the past, and then the Vance and Bourne survey looked at, what people's attitudes for the future growth of it is. But what we haven't really dived into is these attitudes. Where do they come from? What is the future of COBOL? And I think that's what this new research is intended to do, right?
Yes. Maybe that's a good segue to dig into this new research. So let's kind of expand on it. Like, what is the goal? What are you hoping to learn? What is the message you're hoping is conveyed or talked about in the market? Because again, it sounds like there's been also some various surveys done by various vendors, but this is, from my knowledge, is one of the first vendor neutral style of surveys done. So kind of expand on it. Tell us about this work.
I think the main idea came from the fact that most of the really rigorous invested in research was funded by individual vendors, and the results, no big surprise, pretty much confirmed the theory going in and what the vendor was looking to get. The value of the Open Mainframe project is that it's not beholden to any individual technology or point of view. And so to get that agnostic industry view, I think is really important. And as you've heard, we all have opinions. We all have talked to each other about what the misconceptions are around COBOL, and my opinion of unconscious bias, and the research that Maggie found is all based on talking to us. And so we're hoping to use the force and the network of the Linux Foundation to get a broader industry understanding of the perceptions of COBOL outside of the mainframe and COBOL space, as well as what the future of it is, and maybe even a little bit of, I'd love to see if it includes some message testing of what is it those facts are that are compelling and convincing and could actually change the direction of the way non-mainframe, non-COBOL people view this technology and careers therein. It's pretty ambitious as far as I'm concerned.
So this is not sponsored by any one vendor. It's sponsored by the Open Mainframe Project and the Linux Foundation. Who's actually doing the research? Have we enlisted a third-party research firm? When does it start? How do people participate? When will we see answers? In no particular order. Go ahead.
So this is going to be through the, what is it called? The Linux Foundation Research.
Yep. Early research department. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's the Linux Foundation's research arm itself.
That's Stephen, John, I think it's Stephen's last name.
Yeah. Stephen Hendrick and
yes.
Hillary Carter. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And as far as funding it, we're fundraising for it right now. We're looking for sponsors because it is going to be pretty comprehensive. And if we can promote John through this, where anybody listening can get their organization to sign on as a supporter, I think the information that comes back is going to be really valuable across not just the vendor industry, but also the end customers.
Matter of fact,
anybody with a COBOL application, I think this should be a useful research for them.
John, what are you doing at 2 today, right after this meeting? What are you doing at 2?
I have a feeling you're signing me up for something.
Yeah, you're signed up.
I know your days are pretty booked, but it just came to me when Missy said that. I'm having a call with about 25 industry executives at 2, and I'd be glad to let you make a 5-minute pitch for funding there if you're so inclined.
Sure. Sounds good. This is on the record now. So
You'd look bad if you said no.
You heard it first out there.
No, Cam, I'm not interested in your money. No.
But for those people, hold on a sec. For those people not on Cam's call,
if you are interested in potentially sponsoring and being part of this great project, please do. If you go to the Open Mainframe Project as part of Linux Foundation's website, you can contact them there, and the appropriate people will reach out to you. Because this is a more the merrier kind of thing, right? The wider the net that we cast, the better the results will be, and by all means, we should do it. Is there a time frame for this, Maggie?
Or Misty, excuse me.
This is unfortunately not mine.
I got you. You did your research, right? Misty, is there a time frame on this one?
I think it pretty much comes down to when we have the money, we will do the research. We are very much hoping that we will hit our target dollar amount within the next few months so that we can get this research done in FY23 in 2023. It's a massive project and it's an important one. I don't want it to delay for 2 years or whatever. That would be really failing to be impactful.
Well, what happens is in a 2-year frame, so much can change. Just think back where we were 2 years ago. And
I can't remember back that far. So much has changed.
I think it was still COVID, to tell you the truth. It was still COVID times, right, since 2020, around February of 2020. So almost 3 years now. Anyway, whenever we do, and hopefully we'll get this research started soon, I think it'll really be an enlightening thing of it. Let me, Maggie, let me propose something to you. So while the situation in the U.S. seems to be cloudy, no pun intended, regarding COBOL, I know for a fact, like let's say in India and the subcontinent there, they're churning out COBOL programmers. They're churning out people who have, COBOL experience, expertise, whatever you want to call it. Do they know something we don't, or what's going on? Why?
When you have systems that train for in-demand skills, you'll tend to see those skills trained in surplus. And it is absolutely and remains true that this skill set is in demand. The trick of the thing with the Indian subcontinent is the relative scarcity of visas for these types of programmers. So they're being relatively overtrained for the opportunities that they have. And that's a little bit of the trick. So I'm based in the EU. We have the same problem that you see in the States, or it's a little cloudy, as we say. India, completely different. Pakistan, completely different. But unless the large multinational firms are going outsourcing wise, they still don't. There's still a mismatch in the market. They are a bunch of talented people, but we can't hire them where we need them to be.
It's always that's frustrating. Always.
And Alan, I think that is more like a cultural thing and a societal thing, because the universities I'm in contact with in India, they don't teach COBOL any more frequently than we do in the universities themselves. But in terms of the population, for some reason, they have access to more training programs. I don't know what that is. I think the same thing is true in Europe. Now, I tell you, I am seeing almost a seismic awareness of this in corporate America today. People are contacting me almost on a daily basis. Where can they find COBOL? Where can they find COBOL? So I am seeing that. Now, their willingness to undertake what they want me to do is microwave them some developers and just send them resumes. That's what they want me to do. I've explained to them that the only thing I've seen work in this situation over and over again is for you to build cohorts internally over a period of years and grow your own. That is the only feasible solution, because if you hire 4 or 5 people this year, you got the same problem next year. You got the same problem next year. So that I'm not seeing enough long-term thinking. I am seeing it in terms of the federal government. And Maggie, I think your project is going to get a lot of notice because people are looking for that kind of scale. They're looking. The IRS needs to train 600 developers last week. So
I'll have 42 in about a year.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the real gist of it, right? I need hundreds now, and I'm turning out dozens over the course of a year, and so what happens is that gap continues, right? The gap goes like this, not like this.
Yeah,
and so
I've been watching it for a long time.
Changes that.
I saw this. I've been doing this since 2005, and immediately I was certain that people were going to catch on before now because it's just glaring. And my bugaboo and my colleagues on the call know this. Alan, you will know it if you talk to me long. My pet peeve is the HBCUs, the historically Black colleges in America. This is an opportunity that they have just slept on. Because I've taught this technology at 4 HBCUs, and at all of them, the story is exactly the same. You attract companies to that campus, be it Alcorn State, be it Tennessee State, wherever, companies that never recruited there before, they come to your campus because you're teaching mainframe. But guess what? You need DBAs and network people and project managers too. So if your mainframers are good, your other people, and that's the way. And the HBCUs have completely slept this. It drives me crazy.
Although it's not only HBCUs, sir. Yeah, I see it from I see it from the other universities too. It's not just HBCUs. So there's this example that I know of. One of the large credit card processors pays a community college system to have the class, it pays for the credentials, it pays for the lecture themselves to give a class in COBOL so that they can onboard people inside of their system already. They offer to do the same thing, which is functionally just a little bit more money at the university that is in the same city, and the university won't do it. So that's why everything's running over the community college. It's not just HBCUs. There's a lot of bias in the way that we think about it.
I want to tie this back to your question earlier, Alan, which is that we never answered, which was our predictions for 2023. And I think that we're seeing a tide change in attitudes across students, across universities, across employers about the need for COBOL. But I think one of the reasons why these organizations have a hard time recruiting and retaining is because of the way they defined the job. I'm going to be like really blunt about it. The way most companies define their COBOL jobs, they're shit jobs. They're go in and maintain the same code and do nothing creative or innovative. That tide is changing. Companies are looking at their COBOL assets. They know that they can do more with it. They know they have to be more dynamic in the current environment. So in my job, I talk to a lot of people about modernization. It is a very, very hot topic. Modernizing COBOL applications in particular. The job of modernizing a COBOL application is much, much more interesting than those maintaining COBOL jobs that
I agree with you. You got to make it exciting for people. No one wants to go in.
Drudge. Guys, we had a hard stop a minute ago, and I got to respect that. Everyone has stuff to do. I want to thank the three of you for coming on, as usual, and just lighting it up. I so appreciate it. I know John does too. We will have you back on. We'll continue. More importantly, anybody's organization out there who might be interested in sponsoring this Cobalt new research will be groundbreaking. Check it out on the Open Mainframe Project panel. John, thanks for being with us. This is Alan Schimmel for the Open Mainframe Project video series. We'll see you next month.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
CISO Talk, to hear how real-world CISOs are dealing with today's real-world issues. From enabling secure remote workers to accelerating secure cloud adoption, defending against a pandemic of security attacks and beyond, CISO Talk covers the cyber topics you want to learn about. With your hosts, Unisys CISO Matt Newfield and MediaOps CEO Alan Schimmel, featuring a revolving panel of CISO cyber experts. This is where CISOs talk. Join us on digitalanarchist.com and techstrong.tv.
This is Techstrong TV.
Hey everyone, welcome back to our continuing coverage of AWS reInvent 2022 out here in Las Vegas. We're at our studio, Techstrong TV studio here at the Wynn. We set up a suite and been doing a bunch of interviews all week, meeting some great people. I want to introduce you to our next guest today, and his name is Andre Roll, and he is with Uptick. Actually, only since about April, you had said, right, Andre?
Yep, that's correct, yep.
Anyway, welcome. Welcome
Thank you.
to
Thanks for having
TV.
me.
Rather than me trying to read from some biography, why don't you share with our audience a little bit about your personal journey?
Yeah, thank you. So like you mentioned, I've been at Uptix for several months right now. Prior to Uptix, I was with AWS for over 5 years, and I was overseeing their account takeover division. So a lot of folks don't know this, but AWS has a division that focuses on legitimate accounts being compromised or breached. So I ran that team, and some of the learnings we found there were just immense, which we'll get into a little bit. But so I spent 5 years at AWS. Prior to that, I was at Rackspace for 7 years.
Oh, really?
Yep. So so I've got a lot of knowledge and experience within enterprise companies, and my background's always been within cloud security, cybersecurity, network security.
Yeah.
So it's been an interesting journey just to see how this has evolved over the last couple of years.
Right. We didn't even call it cybersecurity.
Yeah.
Right? Network security or InfoSec.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's interesting about the account takeover team. If you don't mind, I want to spend just a moment on that. And that is, in talking off camera, a lot of organizations, they don't take action till you contact them and say, hey, my account's been taken over. My Coinbase account was hacked, my Facebook or whatever, and I'm not blaming any of them, but it's generally a reactive situation where a customer says, "Oh my goodness, I've got bad stuff going on." From what you mentioned, the Amazon model was a little bit more proactive.
Yeah, exactly. So at Amazon, AWS, we had a very skillful technical team, a lot of machine learning. We would look for anomalies in the data, and we would actually proactively notify customers, and where necessary, we would actually proactively mitigate or terminate any resources that were spun up by these threat actors. 9 out of 10 times, they were spinning up resources to mine cryptocurrency.
Sure.
So, yep.
Yeah, well, let's not even get into where the crypto market and currencies are today. But that's interesting that it was a much more of a proactive, ML-based, take action type of service. What I realize is not everyone out here may be familiar with Uptix, so they know AWS, we're here. But what about Uptix? How would you describe kind of Uptix's mission to our audience?
Yeah, we're a unified platform. So if you think about security, you have developer laptops, you have containers, Kubernetes, you have cloud. We offer a platform that allows you to gain visibility into all of those solutions. A single user interface that you can go in and get visibility into assets. And most importantly, we give you a risk assessment and will allow you to remediate. Also we find that customers find security, technology, it's complex. And the reason they come to us is because they want to make it less complex and they need our help. So, to sum it up, we're a CNAP and XDR platform that many customers can use to kind of help manage their risk in their environments.
Absolutely. And look, our audience is technical. They know XDR, right? Detection and response, extended detection and response. And so the initials don't get them too out of way. But let's talk a little bit about Secrets Menu. I don't have to spend a lot of time, but it's something, Uptix is working in.
Yeah.
Share.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're running a campaign right now. You can get all of our solutions, or everything I mentioned, endpoint detection, Kubernetes containers, cloud, CSPM, CIEM, CDR, for $1.
Really?
$1. So
Christmas.
All you have to do is sign up by December 31st, and you can enroll a minimum of 100 assets or a maximum of 1,000 assets, cloud or on-prem too.
Wow.
And you get to use our full product suite for those assets. And with that comes enterprise support.
Love it.
So it's a pretty...
That's a pretty good deal.
Pretty good deal. So
look, I don't want to, hey, this crazy Eddie, and sign up now, but for $1, you got a month, folks. You can check it out. You know what I find interesting, though, when I look at the Uptix story? Like many companies today, look, we're all focused on cloud and cloud security. There's 55,000 people here, right? So it's all about the cloud. But in today's world of security, and you've been in security a long time too, we've broken down the silos about endpoint security, cloud security, network security, IAM, it used to be much more rigid that generally someone doing, like, look, from where I came from, we had host-based security, right? Endpoint security, network security, and kind of never the twain shall meet.
Yeah.
But today, if you don't have sort of a comprehensive security offering like Uptix does here, you can't really be good just in the cloud.
No.
You need that endpoint sort of view of things and see what's going on here to help make you better here in the cloud, and vice versa.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the biggest challenges CISOs are having right now is security tool sprawl. And there was a statistic that I think the average security team is using anywhere between 30 and 40 different tools. Imagine the security team and the security manager having to be successful with multiple tools, multiple user interfaces. It becomes a nightmare. So that's why I think Uptix is uniquely positioned. We have a single tool that you can go across that threat landscape, like I said, from developer laptop to cloud to on-prem.
Yeah.
And we're there to help you make sense and manage your risk.
It's the complexity issue. Security's hard.
Yeah.
I don't care whether it's cloud security, endpoint security, whatever. Security's hard. It's always been that way, unfortunately. It's harder when you have this sprawl, as you called it, right? And you got to manage, especially how many endpoint detection and response tools do I need? And it's hard. So I want to spend the rest of our time, though, talking a little bit about kind of the lessons you learned at Amazon with account takeovers and so forth, and bringing it into what you're doing at Uptix, right? How do you build on that knowledge to make an Uptix offering or an Uptix better?
Yeah.
You don't mind?
No, absolutely. One of the biggest lessons I learned at AWS was cloud security, to your point, is very complex. Even the enterprise customers that we engaged with, whose accounts were breached, they were at a loss at times of what to do. So simplifying cloud and the security of cloud is one of the biggest lessons I've learned. The other one is how threat actors think. AWS, for example, is made up of a bunch of APIs connecting all the services. That's really what it is. When threat actors are in an environment, they're hitting certain APIs to achieve a desired outcome. We got to know threat actor behavior, almost like a fingerprint, a pattern, and really understand how they think through it. So thinking like a threat actor, but also how do you simplify cloud security for customers are my two biggest takeaways. Let's go to Uptix now. So at Uptix, one of the solutions that I've developed is called Cloud Detection and Response. Again, going to a threat actor. They have a desired outcome. They need to, for example, escalate privileges. We have mapped out the sequence of APIs that threat actors are calling, and we're displaying it in a way that is very simple to customers to say, hey, someone has escalated privileges in your environment. Here are the exact APIs that they called. Oh, and by the way, here are the links to the API documentation, and we're going to give you metadata. As a long-term credential was used? Was it an IAM role that was used? Where was the source IP? Has that source IP been seen in your account in the last 90 days? Has a user agent been seen in your account? So we're trying to help security teams identify and get to a point of action very much a lot quicker. And most importantly, we're giving remediation. So here's what you need to do, Mr. Customer, Mrs. Customer, to go in and remediate this.
Because a lot of people don't know how to do the remediation.
Yep. So
Let me tell you a flaw I've seen in the security world for as long as I've been in it. And I wonder when Uptycs gets to this. So when I first started a company back in 2001 called Still Secure, a lot of the world was using Snort for IDS then.
Yes.
You remember, right? And IDS was intrusion detection system. And at the time, Checkpoint, Checkpoint was able to, I forgot what it was called, OPSEC or whatever, where you could like insert a rule into a checkpoint firewall to block something based upon what you saw. Of course, by the time you were able to do that, the attacker was in, out, back home, eating lunch, and spending your money, right? But nevertheless, it was the beginning of some sort of automated remediation or automated blocking. So we had this great idea, hey, we're going to build blocking in. We're going to go from IDS to IPS, intrusion prevention. Yeah. And the world is going to love it because we're actually being more proactive. We're blocking them as it's happening. But we really weren't blocking them. It's another story. But anyway, I was so surprised by the market. It took literally almost 10 years for the market to come around to the idea of at least the most basic kinds of code red kind of worms. Why can't I just block those automatically? Why do I need a human? Why do I have to make my case? Why do I have to show you the evidence and then say, maybe you should do this, this is what you should do? When do you think we go to the point where we have enough trust in ML, have enough trust in an Uptycs offering here, where, hey, we're going to block this until you tell us to unblock it, until you tell us to unfix it, because we're that certain that this is an attack.
Yeah, the whole automatic remediation, automatic blocking is a very sensitive subject because
I know
there are false positives. And I think for us, we want to get to that stage, and there are certain customers on our endpoints that we automatically do that. Containers, Kubernetes, we do it, right?
Oh, you do?
Yep. On certain actions and certain rules, we can take that. I think for customers to get comfortable with that
and confident
with that, they need to trust the tool. They need to trust that our alerting and detection there's high confidence in what we're servicing. But again, you could have a developer have a bad day and accidentally do something that triggers a rule, and now they're blocked and potentially bringing down a production system. So I think it's a very slippery slope.
Yeah.
But we can do it today if customers allow us. Going back to some of our offerings like CDR, we're going to offer automated remediation. One click. Go and revert this policy. Go and revoke the session from this IAM role. So we're going to give customers that option if they want to do that.
I love it. And I think that's where we're heading. I think what it is there's a period, and I think that, like everything else in internet time, the time frames crunch. There's a period of, I need to be confident, right? Man, you're sending me, you sent me 10 alerts in the last 3 months, and every single one was right on, right? I trust you. When I get an alert now, I know there's a very high degree of probability that is what's going on. How are you customers? I mean, this is a rolled out, this threat actor kind of idea is rolled out with Uptycs already, or it's something that's coming?
Yeah, it's rolled out. It's rolled out. So.
What kind of response are you hearing from people like who are watching this?
They love it because what we're doing with CDR is we're opening a window into how threat actors think. I've spoken to a lot of security engineers, security executives, and they can tell you how to secure an environment. But as soon as you say, how do you exfiltrate data? How do you escalate privileges? They can, from a high level, explain it, but say, no, give me the exact sequence of APIs you would call to do this. And they struggle. So that's what we're doing, is we're showing them the threat actor behavior and how to achieve that desired outcome. Not only are we opening that window, we're also educating them now. Now the security team can say, oh, this is how you escalate privileges in a cloud environment. This is how you can exfiltrate data. Oh, I did not know that.
Right.
So we're helping educate them so that in the future, when they go and design or evolve their cloud security strategy, they can take that into account and understand how threat actors think.
I love it. Let me ask you another, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
'Cause I'm curious. What's the drag time from the time you like kind of say, hey, wait a second, this is fitting this pattern, this looks like a threat actor, to alert, to being able to take action?
Less than a minute.
Really?
Yep.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yep. So we ingest, for example, AWS CloudTrail, AWS config, VPC flow logs. So as soon as that generates and gets sent to us, we're already alerting, detecting off of that.
So you recognize it almost like
almost
in real time.
Yep, almost instantly. Obviously, we're at the mercy of AWS and how quick they can generate it. And then we're using,
Sure, you leave them and now you're bad-mouthing them, huh?
No, I love AWS. They're great. But yeah, it's almost instantaneous.
You need the info to do that.
Exactly. And just one thing, I keep talking about AWS, I've got a bias towards them, but we're multi-cloud.
Oh, you can
AWS,
do this in the other
GCP,
Google and
Azure, yep,
as well?
we can do
That's
all
fantastic.
of that. Everything I've mentioned across all the different clouds.
And we could get it all for $1.
All for $1. There we go.
Unbelievable. What a great promo that is. Hey, I want to thank you, Andre, for coming up and sharing with us. I think you're also the most important thing, if anyone is going to take something out of this, is to be successful in security. You got to kind of think like a bad guy once in a while, like a threat actor. You got to understand what their motivations are. You got to understand what their techniques are. And you have to understand your own infrastructure and what are the roads and paths they take in there in order for you to be successful against them, right? We've passed the time in security where we could sit back and wait for the bad news to happen.
Fingers crossed, no one breaches me.
Yeah,
it's not a great strategy.
It's not a winning strategy.
Yeah.
It's just not.
Agreed.
I want to mention one other thing. Upticks, because I'm looking at his jacket. It's UPTYCS.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
So it's not that you would spell a tick or something. Upticks.com.
Upticks.com, and then the promotion is uptickssecretmenu.com.
I love it. All righty. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. This has been
Not
great.
a problem. Check out upticks.com. Hey, it was until the end of the year?
End of the year.
$1 for the year. This is a no-brainer, guys. Go do that. Learn to think like a threat actor. We're out. We'll be back in a moment here with some more AWS reInvent.
This is Techstrong TV.
Hi, everyone. We're back here. I was going to say live. We are live recording this, but you're not seeing it live. But we are at AWS reInvent. We're at the Techstrong Media Room over at the Wynn Hotel. And our next guest is Ari Paul with Clumio. Ari, welcome. How are you?
Good.
Great to see you. Nice to meet you. So, Ari, well, before we even jump into Clumio, let's hear about you a little bit. What's your position? What do you do at Clumio, and what's your background?
Yeah, I head up the product marketing function at Clumio. Prior to Clumio, I was at Databricks, and then Cohesity earlier than that, and then VMware and Nutanix. So I've been in the cloud infrastructure, data, AI, ML.
Almost as long as there's been a cloud infrastructure space.
I'd like to think not, but yeah.
Well, it's only about, I was there when they started all that, so it's 15 years. Anyway, Clumio. We've had Clumio on Techstrong before, and but not everyone watches every show, unfortunately, as much as I'd like them to. Why don't you share with our audience, give us kind of the Clumio kind of level set. What do they do? What do you guys do here?
Yeah. Clumio is building a data protection platform for AWS data. So unlike most data protection companies that we see, like the legacy companies or upstarts such as Cohesity and Rubrik, we're hyper focused on protecting data that's already on AWS. So things like data lakes, machine learning training data, application data, stuff that sits on Amazon S3 or DynamoDB or RDS. We help customers protect that data and provide resiliency to their applications and data lakes.
Got it. Well, and that kind of begs my next question, which is the AWS connection. And I think you kind of laid it out, but why don't we make sure we'll connect the dots here for people?
Definitely. What I found out at Clumio is that there are a lot of AWS users that are not super well versed on this shared responsibility model. And what that states is that AWS is responsible for the durability and availability of the infrastructure, but the data that sits on top of that infrastructure is the customer's responsibility. So we have partnered with AWS to create a platform that helps customers simplify the resiliency of that data that sits on top of AWS. So we help customers protect against things like accidental deletions, ransomware, wipeout attacks, help them stay in compliance for like long-term retention purposes, meet customer SLAs, so on and so forth.
I love it. All right. So have you been to reInvent before? Last year?
Well, virtually actually, when I was at Cohesity. But
have you ever been in person to reInvent?
I don't think so. This is my first time actually.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
So it's pretty big. It's, you were downstairs. We're not even in the hotel where the conference is.
True.
And it's a zoo down there. It's crazy around floor. What's your impression so far?
Well, I have been to several VM worlds. And
so it's of a similar size.
Yeah, I would say this is about three and a half times as big this year, at least. Very, very builder focused, which we love. VMworld and like the early days of reInvent were IT practitioner focused, but I've seen a lot of, I've kind of seen the median profile shift from like the IT practitioner to the DevOps, Cloud Ops, SecOps kind of persona.
I don't think that's just reInvent. I think that's pretty much the industry.
Yeah.
Where, what we used to call, so I've been in here longer than you, right? What we used to call the IT practitioner has morphed. Sometimes they're an SRE, or they're a platform engineer, or they're a DevOps engineer or DevOps person, or something else. We've seen these roles mature and specialize more. You don't see that IT guy anymore, right? And it is what it is. It's because I think the world we live in now has a lot more complications and so forth in it, right? But it's also a good thing for Clumio, right? And because security has become where security was other, right? It wasn't the IT practitioner who did security. It was the security guy. And it was a guy.
Yeah.
98% of the time. But now security or the security functionality has been built into each of these roles we're talking about.
Absolutely.
Right? And you still have the security person.
Yep.
But you also have security embedded in a lot of that. What does that mean for Clumio?
Yeah. First of all, it's really astute observation in the sense that like the more things change, the more they remain the same, right? So you used to have an IT guy, and now that's like rebranded as Cloud Ops or whatever.
Okay.
I think that from a security standpoint, what we're seeing is that every line of business or every sort of subunit of IT will have its own like security function. So in our conversations, which we originally started like back in like 2017, 2018, we started conversing with customers. That persona, which was like a backup admin or a cloud admin, is now like your security engineer, or like we've had several conversations with chief security officers. A lot of large deals that we have closed have started off as discovery calls with the CSOs and CISOs. So yeah, security is definitely like proliferating across, be it like the engineering org or the resiliency org or the IT org. And that has opened up a lot of, like Clumio is now seen as sort of like we have a horizontal play versus
Right.
like a narrow like
Yeah.
vertical play.
And that, I mean, not just Clumio, a lot of tools in the security space, especially, you see security companies making tools for developers,
That's
right, to develop more secure code and for test, in testing and everything. So I think we have seen, and that's a great way of thinking about it. We've seen the horizontalization, if that's a word,
Yeah.
of security rather than just being in a security vertical.
Totally.
Yeah,
Um,
and I
there-
think it's evident here at reInvent.
Oh, absolutely. Like you said, yeah, there's developer security, there's API security, there's cloud security, network security. It just goes on and on. However, I will mention that, I think Gartner has a prediction that about 99% of cloud security breaches going forward will be user driven. So it's not like it'll be malicious actors that just hack into your system, but things like accidental deletions, insider threats. That's the kind of stuff that no matter how many security tools you sort of patch together, you can't really protect for. Yes, you can do a little bit to do secure your perimeter. You can do access control. You can have like role-based privileges, but there are certain things where unless you have like a protected backed up copy of your data, there's just no way to recover. So Clumio or companies like Clumio, they're often seen as kind of the last line of defense, which is what makes us like easier to digest when we talk to these different security personas. Yeah,
I get it. You know what? Let's spend a little time about, our audiences out there saying, all right, this sounds interesting. I'd like to find more, maybe find out more, test it, see what it, see where it fits into our scheme. What would you recommend to them?
Yeah, I think a lot of the customers we talk to are hardcore, like engineers, right? Data engineers, cloud engineers, and so on. And what we have found is that teams don't really want to spend too much time building a backup strategy. Like they want to innovate. Like today, if you saw the keynote, Adam Slipsky's keynote, it was all about like innovating, building, next generation applications and so on. And we would like to support our customers to do that by taking away the complexity of backups and snapshots and recoveries, versions, replicas, and so on. So if you are an engineering leader or an operations leader in the cloud space and you have an AWS environment, chances are that Clumio can really take away all that complexity, not from just the engineering team, but from your cloud bill as well. We routinely save our customers between 60 and 80% of costs that they would have incurred originally. And that's just like the operational costs. The cap expenses for building backups are also pretty high. So I think Clumio can be interpreted as like a one-stop shop for any backup and recovery or data protection requirements that customers have for data that's sitting on AWS.
Got it. People want it's Clumio.com, CLUMIO.
That's right, Clumio.com. Like everything is on there. I want to say that if you are if you have a data lake, or if you're running machine learning applications off of like an S3 environment, or if you're feeding S3 into like a Snowpipe or a Databricks, you need to protect that data. And if you have come to the realization, either if you read about it or you've had to do it the hard way, Clumio can help you like protect, secure, and essentially make that data undeletable. So yeah, Clumio.com. And
love it.
Yeah.
Good stuff. All right. We're going to let you get back to reInvent. We're going to take a break. I think we have a little bit more here today, and we'll be right back.
This is Techstrong TV.
Hey everyone, we're back. We're back at AWS reInvent with our continuing coverage. I'm really happy to have our next guest with us in person. I've interviewed him via Zoom for a long time, but I think it's the first time we're doing it in person. It's Evan Kaplan. Evan is the CEO of InfluxDB. They're the people behind the InfluxDB open source database as well as Influx itself, and he's going to tell us more about it. Evan, a pleasure to have you here in person.
Thanks. Hope it's not disappointing to see me in person.
No,
a lot of times it's a letdown for people.
You know what? Look, truth be told, Evan grew up in the town next to where I grew up in, and so we probably crossed paths somewhere along the way, and we spent the last 20 minutes reminiscing with some of our other Techstrong team, and the ties go back. Evan, you know what? Actually, before we get into Influx, give people an idea of your journey in the tech world, because it's interesting,
including the felony convictions.
Well,
or
let's keep that one out of it, but I'm going to leave it up to you.
No, I started out. I was not a tech person. I started out working for Outward Bound, being a climbing guide and an instructor for years.
Really,
and totally different. And then got into technology. I took an internship at an aerospace company, doing actually management development and training. And after a year of doing that, I was like, I want to get into the middle of this stuff. And I became a program manager, and I went back to business school. And I worked in the early days of, well, you'll know this, of TCP/IP networking, a company called WRQ, the maker of Reflections. And then, the internet, had my first email account in 91 or something. And so I was the product manager for TCP/IP on the desktop. So just to mentally get that. I mean, if your audience is listening, there was a time when an operating system did not come.
I was just going to say, that was before TCP/IP was built in. You had to add on.
You had to buy it. It was, by the way, it was $499 for a PC.
Yeah.
Buy it.
Yeah.
It was a great business.
Well, but the PC was $5,000, so, it's all relative.
It was a great business that evaporated like in a year when Microsoft took over.
Yep.
And then I started a company which you may know about, Avantel, the first SSL VPN.
Yep.
So ran that through the bubble, built it up, took it down, sold it to Sonic Waldell, and then took some time off, and then ran a public company called iPass, turnaround global Wi-Fi around the world. So my background had been security and networking. And then I worked at a venture firm for a little while and joined Influx in 2016, and teamed up with Paul Dix, the founder, and it's been a really, really great journey. I love it.
Absolutely. As long as I got you here in person, we're not in a rush. I've tried in the past, because I interview other people from Influx as well. I'd like to, explain to people the relationship between the open source DB and then the Influx business, if you will. And we've done a decent job, but you're the CEO. How do you see, first of all, let's start with the pieces. InfluxDB, the open source, right? Great database, it's open source. And then the Influx business offering built on top of it.
That's right. What's the diff? Yeah. So the open source started, we shipped the first version of it like in 2014. It was immediately popular. It's built a large community of users. Today, there are roughly 700,000+ people who run it every day that we can see in the open source. So the open source is a gigantic community. I would guess it's probably in the top 6 or 7 database open source communities out there. The differentiation that we started building in 2016 was, if you wanted to run the open source, it was very powerful on a single node. So you could handle a couple of million data points a second. It was very powerful. People could use it, but there was no high availability. And so what we've sold is the ability to cluster and shard the data across multiple things and run it highly available, a little bit more UI, a little bit more management, and that's made the enterprise product. But then we also have a cloud product where it's dedicated tenant, where we'll run it for you. And then over the last 2 years, we built a multi-tenant serverless cloud where you just pay based on consumption, read, write. So we're following kind of a well-worn path. I would say the people who pioneered this path, and probably Mongo has done it.
Yeah.
Build an open source platform, build a community around it, make it easy to use, right? And then offer an enterprise, then offer a multi-tenant cloud and cloud-based business. And eventually your business is, it's both, but it's more, the cloud business grows faster.
Well, I've been around as long as you have, right? It used to be the only business model that ever succeeded in open source was Red Hat. Red Hat was like the shining
That was
example.
by the way, when I went to raise money in 2016,
that was the problem.
People turned us away. Mongo had done a down round, and that was the headline. The only people who ever made money
was Red Hat.
This is before Elastic. This is before Confluent. This is before all these companies that.
Absolutely. And now, but the world's changed, right? People now understand that you build a great business on an open source foundation like you've done here. And it's a beautiful model. Yeah, you might have 700,000 people who are running the open source. I don't need 700,000 people as paying customers. I need.
It'd be nice.
It would be real nice. We wouldn't be sitting here. We'd have I'd be in your suite. But instead, a percentage of those will go for the SaaS space, will go for the serverless, will go for the more enterprise, high availability enterprise kind of features. And it's a great business model. The other thing we didn't mention is, look, MongoDB, Couchbase, NoSQL databases kind of burst on the world. Really, time series data is something that Influx, right, was.
Yeah, we feel like
pioneer of.
And I would give Paul the credit for that. I'd say we pioneered the modern time series category.
No doubt about it.
There, and what we've watched over our careers is if you had a database problem in 98 or something like that, you had Oracle, you had Informix, and you had IBM V2, right? And whatever.
And then eventually Microsoft.
Yeah, whatever your nail looked like, that was what you were going to hammer it with.
Yep.
And what's happened, two broad trends that I think are really fascinating that you know about. One is the general trend towards open source, starting with MySQL. And so the general favorability, and now it's really tough to I think, introduce a new database platform that's not built on open source, right? So I think that's first of all. And the second is then now the taxonomy, the categorization. Is before it was relational everything.
Right.
Now you've got really big categories in relational, in document, in search, in graph, in time series. And so, and time series includes real-time analytics and all this capability about working with stuff in real time and IoT and things like that. So it's exciting.
It is exciting. I think the other thing is the explosion of data, right? For, Yahoo Hadoop, when that first came out, we started thinking about big data as a category, if you will. Today, everything's big data, right? I mean, my phone has big data on it, it seems, or so Apple seems. They charge me for the extra storage. But, and really that's a piece of this too. We talk about scalability. Even the open source InfluxDB, the scalability, I mean, within the confines
Sometimes I
of
think
one
it's a
server.
little too scalable.
Well, I would imagine you would as the CEO,
No, listen, we love the fact that we're committed to this open source. It's part of our core values. And a great open source company monetizes 1% of their community.
Exceptional is 2 to 3.
Yeah, and so you have a very specific offering if you can monetize 2 to 3%. So I think we have about 1,600 paying customers against a very large community of
That's
folks.
fantastic.
So in some ways, I think our open source is too good, but that's fine.
But that's part of it. I mean, because the good news is, if it's that good, it'll keep attracting more and more of a base, and it gives you more and more of an opportunity to build revenue opportunities.
It does, and if they and since this is a business of design wins, people they're building a service or an application, they choose their database. Once they choose it, you're kind of in there. So if they choose it on open source, you're hoping eventually that they get to scales or things where they really want to engage with you commercially. But I think it's worth mentioning, because especially you, because you've tracked the open source world for a long time, is I think we've taken a counter position that what most people have done in the open source world. So we have this new database engine that's just getting introduced on commercial products called IOX. It's been very popular on GitHub. It's built on Apache Arrow, Parquet, Data Fusion, so it really fits into this next generation of data ecosystem. And we've chosen to MIT license it, open source,
Great.
Completely permissive, which means somebody could take it and compete with us.
Absolutely.
And that's not been, if you look at what Mongo's done with AGPL2 or 3, or Grafana has done, or Elastic has done, if people have really tried to build these secondary licenses that really hem in where they can be used, which is a little bit counter to the open source world, and Paul has a lot of conviction about it, and so he's convinced me, and we've steered clear of that. We said, listen, it's our job to create the differentiation between the open source and the paid commercial, back to your earlier point. It's not our job to confuse people about what they can and can't use.
You know what? I've been involved in open source for a long time, and I fought those wars in security around GPL, lower, higher, all the MIT and the copyrights versus IP and freeze and freedom versus freeze and beer and all of these things. And here's the good news. Along with the success of open source business models and companies, I see people don't get quite as hung up about what version of the license until it's an enterprise situation.
And then
then the lawyers come out and they're like, hey, what are we doing here? There's a potential liability. I need closure and clarity on my licensing. And
it's part of every procurement dynamic now.
And there's a whole, I don't want to say a cottage industry, it's bigger than a cottage industry of companies that will police your licensing, right? Of software. Right. So interesting stuff. I think we actually did an interview, maybe it was with your CTO around this a couple of months ago, but we'll check it out on Techstrong TV. It's probably in there. Let's talk a little bit about reInvent. What are you guys doing here? What are you seeing? What are you thinking?
First of all, super encouraging, to be honest with you. I mean, I was only a day into it, and last night was the first night. But yeah, given the narrative that we've all heard about the economy and we're all feeling relative to inflation and potential demand slakening, people are here.
5,000 people.
Is that what they say? Yeah.
Yeah.
The people are here. And there are people here, and they're, this has become, the go-to show for certainly anything, infrastructure, storage, security, cloud.
I think it was before COVID, and it's more so now. But I think the other thing is Amazon's timing and messaging is right on, right? Yep. Hey, I think this is, I don't want to say Cloud 2.0 or something like that, but the cloud has matured while we've all been stuck in our houses and having to do these things. And so this is a different cloud.
Yeah, it is a different cloud. I mean, that could be a whole other discussion.
3 years ago.
Because I think also, the discussion that I'm starting to see at the edge is about repatriation, right? And I don't know if you've covered any of that, about people being concerned about their cloud bills, the cost.
That's a whole other industry, right?
Yeah, I think we'll see. Listen, I think cloud is inevitably going to be the primary platform for most enterprises. But I think we'll see some swinging back the other way a little bit particularly as companies scale.
I don't think hybrid's going away, but no. I think we're also, and we just covered this in DevOps Experience, a virtual event we did last month. You've got it at the cloud, but you also, at the edge is happening.
Yep.
And as 5G continues to mature, you're going to see more and more of that edge become, the new battleground, the new place where stuff is beyond the edge.
Yeah, so that's exactly that plays exactly into some of our thinking. One of our primary competitors for this serverless cloud are Amazon's TimeStream and Azure's Data Explorer. And the advantage we have is we have all three modalities. We have the enterprise and we have the edge. The edge can store and forward data. You can downsample at the edge, push the data to the cloud. That becomes, for IoT, that's a standard architecture. You're running a large building, a hotel, any kind of on-premise factory or things like that. You don't want cloud storage, but you don't want everything going to the cloud. You want local storage, you want downsampling, setting up to the cloud, maybe for doing AI processing.
Yep.
And that's a thing that fundamentally, what's articulate is the people who used to be good at it, the Microsofts of the world, right? Not been part of their strategy for some time, and so it ends up being a competitive advantage for us.
I agree with you. I mean, again, at this DevOps Experience, that was the three tracks: at the cloud, at the edge, and then beyond IoT. Called it the DevOps of things, right? And I think that's, if you have an offering that's married to only one of those places or only one of those providers, I don't think they may not give a crap about licensing, but they care about lock-in.
So this is where the strategy, you walk around the show floor, you look at the Confluence of the world, the Mongos of the world, the Elastics, and to some extent Databricks of the world is, you've got this very understood business model where you build the open source platform, Kafka or Spark or MongoDB or Elastic, right? You build a community around that, and then you roll into the cloud and you depend on your brand and the people's awareness of what you built to create the competitive barrier. And so in most cases, the cloud native products, the ones that come from the CSP, are weaker and less attractive to the customer than having Confluent or Mongo.
Absolutely.
Or Influx.
But to a certain extent, that's always been the AWS model too. They would give you 80% of functionality, 20% of the price, but it wasn't even 80%.
Yeah, it's definitely not 20% of the price anymore.
No, not
so that changed. Yeah, that
but I think that's another thing that's still playing itself out in this ecosystem, right? Because you got to give Amazon credit; they've done a great job building a channel partner program here.
Oh, what a machine!
Yeah,
what a machine.
Probably one of the best I've seen in our.
It reminds me, just come into the trade show. This trade show, it's a gigantic business if you didn't even have.
I know. Well,
if you'd built a trade show like
context, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, hey Evan, we're about out of time, but any other news from Influx that we didn't hit on?
No, the primary thing of discussion is this new database engine, IOX, which opens us up to a bunch of SQL-oriented developers who are building this next stuff on a super fast platform.
How can people get more info on that one?
Go to Influx Data. It should be on the front page. It's in our cloud native product.
Right there.
Oh, your
services.
We always have it. You'll tell them all about it.
We probably have multiple stories on it. If not, we'll get one of the mics on it. But it's good stuff. It's a pleasure seeing you.
Great seeing you. The real pleasure.
All right. We're here at AWS reInvent with Evan Kaplan, CEO of InfluxDB, Influx Data. We'll be back in a minute with some more, folks.
Previously on Engineering the Change.
The program at Boca Code was amazing.
My career has completely changed from barely being able to, hold down a job to now being sought after by some of the biggest tech companies in the world.
Boca Code has built me up.
If you grant me the scholarship, like I said, I will share my knowledge with people, with women or immigrants.
Dreamed of having the opportunity to show the world, how great, I can be.
I feel that anything I do my best in. So wherever I end up, I'm going to do the best I can to make sure I'm making a positive impact. So this scholarship would definitely assist me in changing the trajectory of my life.
Excited to tell Carly about her winning. She is so pumped to really embark on her career as a software engineer. All right, Carly, we got the whole camera crew with us. All right, come on in, guys. We're coming in. Carly, I'm sorry, your name?
Harold.
Harold?
Yes.
So we're making this presentation of $10,000.
You got it? Yeah.
Puppies. This right here.
Is this?
Sure. Oh, yeah. Camera.
Huh? What?
Puppies coming in over here. Hey, how you doing? Donald, we're here. Hey, man. How are you? I want to present you with this.
Oh, my gosh.
We had a top 5. We couldn't pick the finalists. You guys are all great. You're going to be great engineers. So you're in.
Oh, my gosh. Awesome. Thank you so much. This is a very awesome opportunity, and I look forward to strive for the best. Awesome. Thank you.
You're going to be a great engineer, man. Thank you so much, Donald. You know, this was by far the strongest class of people we had who applied for the scholarship. We were able to get it down to 3 finalists, but then in meeting with the judges, we couldn't pick a winner. So what we decided to do is just pick all 3 finalists as winners, and so we want to make this contribution to your life.
Thank you so much.
And we're going to award Stephanie Sanchez as one of our 3 Spring 2022 winners of the Engineering the Change Scholarship. Stephanie, congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Hey everyone, I'm Alan Schimmel, CEO of Techstrong Group. We are a tech media company based here in Boca Raton, Florida, and we have been for 8 years. I've been a resident of Boca Raton for 20 years now, and it's always been one of my hopes, aspirations, is that South Florida would become a tech hub. So we opened this program, it's called Engineering the Change, to underserved communities including women, people of color, but any underserved community in the tech space, right? When I look back, and we have some of the past winners here with us, and I look at the difference it's made in the community, in their lives, it's something to be really proud of.
So, you know, one of the things that Boca Code really takes is partnerships with companies like Techstrong and other local companies, because we need them to, you know, to help support the school, and we need them to, you know, to hire and interview our students as well.
I'm going to introduce some of our past winners and just have them briefly talk a little bit about, you know, how their life has gone since taking this class.
When I received the scholarship, I had a lot of mixed emotions. I was scared but excited for this new chapter. I had worked in the tech industry, but I had never been in an engineering role. You know, the people at Boca Code, Todd, who I affectionately call Coach, because I kind of think of him as the coach in a game, they guide me step by step the whole process. When I graduated from the cohort, I had over 10 offers from tier 2 and tier 1 tech companies, and I had my pick, which was the first time in my life I really had to make a choice where it was completely my decision.
The scholarship changed my life really from 0 to 100. As I said before, I was in a state that I was really lost in terms of my career. I had a neuroscience degree from FAU, but I couldn't get a job. Once I got the scholarship and I did the 10 weeks at Boca Code, it completely changed my life to better, because now I have found actually my passion, which is not just tech, but being able to help women get into this field.
Winning the scholarship was once in a lifetime opportunity to change my career. The program at Boca Code was amazing. I studied a lot of fundamentals of software engineering, and I proved myself that I'm capable of being a successful developer. At that time, I couldn't even imagine how I would need this job in 3 months when the war hit my homeland, Ukraine, and this salary of software developer gave me opportunity to help Ukrainian people in this hard time.
So this year, we wound up with 3 finalists for the scholarship, and we brought them into our panel of judges, and each of the finalists were interviewed, and then the judges got together and we had to pick just one. We tried to pick just one, and we really couldn't pick just one. And they were 3 outstanding candidates. And so what we've decided is to give all 3 of them scholarships. First person is Carly Dorless.
Thank you.
Hey.
Thank you for the opportunity. So
I'll hold the check for you later.
I will do my best to be successful and to help other women and other people.
Our next winner of the Engineering the Change Scholarship for 2022 is a gentleman named Donald Vizio, and Donald will tell you his story. Donald, come on up.
First of all, I want to thank Techstrong, Todd, for introducing me to the scholarship. And, this is an amazing opportunity coming from Haiti. And I hope with this opportunity that Techstrong and Todd introduced me to, I hope to introduce it to others just like myself and give back to my community and show them that, software engineering is cool. It's not just for nerds.
Our third winner for this year's Engineering the Change Scholarship is Stephanie Sanchez.
First of all, thank you both for this opportunity, and congratulations to my fellow recipients. I know we're going to make a significant change in the world. I come from a background of social work, and so I hope to be able to continue to put the people aspect in technology as we help others around us. I'm so grateful to be able to be a part of this. Thank you.
SecurityBoulevard.com is the leading resource for news, analysis, and education on challenges facing the cybersecurity industry. SecurityBoulevard.com covers all aspects of cybersecurity, including data security, DevSecOps, cloud security, application security, network security, security threats, and more. SecurityBoulevard.com has the largest selection of security content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.securityboulevard.com to learn more. SecurityBoulevard.com, home of Security Bloggers Network.
This is Techstrong TV.
Hey guys, thanks for the throw. We're here with Rakshith Rao, who is CEO for API Wiz, and we're talking about API lifecycle management, which is something that most people seem to be overlooking these days. Hey, Rakshith, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me today.
So what do you think is the fundamental problem with API management? Because we have more APIs than ever. Most of them seem to be internally facing, but it doesn't feel like we apply the same level of management principles and best practices to APIs that we do to almost everything else.
I think so. Part of the problem is like what you pointed out. We have a lot more than what we ever imagined with APIs. Look at the last decade in terms of the growth of APIs. What was once thought as helping build a mobile application is powering the entire business today. And like you pointed out, it's experience-based APIs, partners-based APIs, internal APIs, and the API sprawl is just growing. And what we imagined back then doesn't seem to be working in today's landscape when it is even being multiplied with a hybrid multi-cloud strategy that every organization is adopting.
Do we need a dedicated team to manage these APIs, or is it just a function of working with the developers who create the APIs to manage them over the course of their lifecycle?
So when this started out quite some time back, this was seen as a niche team that's focused on making sure that they build the APIs the right way. They took care of trying to be the gatekeepers for the organization. And over the course of time, with every organization scaling up their footprint, this is becoming a challenge. And now they're not able to get the same niche skill set which they needed earlier on. And they're now grappling with trying to do a lot more as part of their business KPIs. But in reality, they're still struggling to make sure that they get a proper release of an API into production that they can bet that it'll work the very first time, which is where there's a major gap in terms of the old process of having more people to solve this problem won't work.
Right. So basically, it doesn't scale unless we find some way to make it possible for the people who created the APIs to manage the APIs. But how do we kind of do that or shift the whole thing left in a way that they can absorb? Right?
That's where I guess the low code, no code nature of what we are seeing, at least in the last couple of years, helping really plug this gap because it's essentially democratizing the whole life cycle process of making sure you design and build, develop, deploy, and monitor them just the right way, where folks are more inclined to focus towards the business logic and not worrying about, hey, did we get the configuration right? Did we put in the right certificate? Did it pass these set of test cases? Hey, by the way, we forgot we needed to push it to this environment for external APIs as well. So these kind of mundane tasks that we are seeing, especially with the more and more APIs and more versions and revisions getting released, is not sustainable. So shift left or low code, no code, whichever you want to call it, is the only sustainable way to make sure that as we go beyond a handful of few hundreds of APIs to thousands of APIs, to remain sane and make sure the business can run, it has to be done differently from what it was done 5-10 years ago.
Does the building and maintaining of those APIs, do I integrate that within a DevOps workflow, or does that sit alongside my DevOps workflow?
Good question that you brought up, right? See, essentially, if you look at what DevOps is all about, it's essentially creating more pipelines or embedding things as part of it. So DevOps is making sure that you can call or invoke certain things when certain things happen. So what we have essentially done as part of API Wiz and the nature of where the industry is heading towards is meant to work within the DevOps construct. And what was initially thought as DevOps predominantly focusing on packaging the right stuff and deploying, slightly expanded to make sure that, hey, we can do testing along with that. We can do release management and other pieces of the life cycle. So the nature of the new way of doing things has to be automated. And DevOps is going to play a significant role and plugged into that.
Mm-hmm. We hear a lot about API security these days. Is security really just an extension of management and we should think about the melding of those two things together, or are they separate motions as well?
Absolutely. Security cannot be a byproduct or an afterthought or seen as a separate piece. Just as the nature of my background, being in the API management space for a little over a decade, we've seen the shifts in terms of how the API and API management constructs has been really seen as. What was once seen as more of a gateway functionality expanded to have analytics and developer portal to simplify the adoption. Then is when people start realizing that the threat vector for an organization is not just having a firewall at the far end of the organization, because it's a hybrid nature of how we all operate today. So which means security cannot be seen and done like what it was initially planned. So a couple of things that we are seeing as a big shift, Mike, is specifically security, governance, and compliance are certain pieces of things which cannot be seen as, hey, it's a function, it's a layer, or it's a group of team that actually manages that. The process or the approach that we started looking at was something that we went through, right, as an organization when we scaled up from a handful of APIs to over 500 APIs that we have today. We started realizing that where is the data model for this? How do you make sure that the design is consistent with what we are releasing? Because security is not just making sure that we are acting as a firewall to protect everything coming in and going out. It also needs to make sure that, just like what we saw with Optus, where an API was exposed naked, which allowed people to completely hack and get all the necessary details. So making sure that how do we not release an API or not even design an API that is not meeting organizational set standards. And that's where we are seeing that some of these natures has to be blended in to the API lifecycle, and it has to be at every point, like at design stage, at testing stage, catch the breaking changes as early as possible in the lifecycle.
We also hear a lot about zombie APIs. Is that a real problem, or is that just some kind of cute name that people have out there that they go, wow, that sounds kind of fun, but it's not really that big an issue? Where are we?
Oh, it's definitely a big problem. We recently spent some time with some of the largest financial organization in the US. And after having gone through a couple of months where we just took a snapshot of all of their services and APIs that they're running within the organization, we were able to give them a complete automated report in terms of here are your services managed, unmanaged, undocumented, used, unused, which are currently in production, even if it means it has only 2 API calls a year or a month, is completely cataloged and given. That's when they realize that 8 versions of a single API still running in production is a big problem. So a lot of them are being done over a period of time. And especially in larger organization, the thought process is don't go break it unless it's not broken or somebody's asking you to fix it. So leave them as is, go build the next iteration. So over a period of time, what we fail to realize is you are now accumulating a lot of API debt, which will come to haunt us back at some time. So some of these are called as zombie APIs, which are how do you make sure that do they even exist? Who's actually using them? To what extent? Should we sunset those APIs? Is there a deprecation policy that we can actually enforce? It's easy to put on paper, but hard to enforce. Similar is shadow APIs that we are seeing, where people don't even know that labs projects get promoted to production, or some APIs are in production and no documentation even exists for those. So some of the process that we have taken is auto-generate the API documentation and catalog them. If something can be attached to a gateway or through process of the DevOps or some form factors through which you can actually get the data about what's being going out, we capture them and document them and even provide a catalog so that organizations have bare bone view of what their API landscape is. If I have 40,000 services, it's a reality check to make sure that do we really need those? Who's using them? To what extent? Should we standardize them? Should we collapse them? Why are we having 8 versions of those APIs? So the business decision, the technical decisions that people make will be a lot easier using this approach.
Do you think the bad guys are getting better at cataloging the APIs than the organizations are that created them, because they're looking at that and scanning that and doing penetration testing, and as a result, they're kind of using those APIs to exfiltrate data in a way that, frankly, people don't realize how easy it is for them to do it.
Obviously, it's definitely that. What we feel is what we are doing as part of a larger organization. We are focusing on putting a lot of thought process into building really cool tech that's solving business problem, customer experience, and everything else. And while we are doing all of this, there are people out there who are making sure that they are using all forms possible to make sure that they can get hold of things or find ways to which they can actually breach the overall organizational perimeter and compromise data and get them out. So one of the things that we've been doing is something called as an API compliance. So which means it's a reality check of every API and every API traffic, which is making sure that it's checking and making sure that are there in nature. I don't want to call it as an AIML or anything as such, but it's really using some level of logics to make sure that there is a method to the madness in making sure that what's going out of the organization or used within the organization, does it meet the set standards? Either the standards needs to be upgraded or being compliant to those. Like, for example, thou shall not expose an API that's not on HTTPS. It's easy to say, but how do you make sure that you can actually enforce this? Or it's easier when it's at saying, encrypted, unencrypted, and stuff like this. How do you make sure that it needs to be encrypted or using specific fields only, or making sure that there is a specific OAuth token or a JWT token that needs to be passed, or other forms of authentication authorization, or even at the field level, is there a credit card information being exposed outside as the raw parameters within the request or response? Things like those where you really want to catch them upfront And we are talking this not in production. We're talking about this as early as in design phase and mapping them back into what's in production. So you're having checks and balance in all places to make sure that while people outside are getting smarter, organization using an automated approach is building intelligence that is helping them to make decisions in terms of are they heading down the right path.
Of course, most of the focus has been on REST APIs, but there are now GraphQL APIs.
Oh, yeah.
Are things getting more complicated, both in terms of volume, but in types of APIs that people are being asked to manage?
Correct. You're absolutely right. So what took time to standardize? Where a lot of organizations moved and standardized towards using REST and JSON as their core means of exchanging information. Obviously, we have come across a major shift towards specific use cases which demand newer ways in which people can actually access them, like GraphQL, like you pointed out, WebSockets, gRPC, event-based model of exposing data. It's changing the way in which data is being exchanged. So which means the way in which you're handling them or having the best practices needs to make sure that you are not putting cognitive overload on the team that's actually building, managing, and running them. Why should the best practices radically change because you're using some new ways of exchanging data? Or the checks that you enforce change radically because you're using a GraphQL? So this is where a low-code, no-code kind of an approach tries to abstract out some of the complexities that are being introduced because of the new nature of how data is being exchanged, or formats, or protocols, so that developers focus on making sure that they do things right, rather than trying to focus on, hey, let's go dedicate a new team that's going to dedicate towards building all these new set of APIs in GraphQL. So you've got two teams. So you've got two different best practices. You've got two different ways in which it's being exposed out. So there is no common data model. For example, if I'm saying we are going to have an address field, how do you make sure that the address field is consistent with REST and GraphQL? How do you make sure that is it camel case, snake case, or are you going to use different form factors? Those should be uniform across the organization, irrespective of whether it is REST or GraphQL, because data is a data that needs to be first looked at. So what we are seeing is essentially a shift towards saying, let's focus on the fundamentals, leave the part of the gateway or the protocols to be done with later on through platforms, so that developers or security team, analyst team, testing team don't need to really change the way they work. They focus on best practices rather than on trying to learn new ways of how to do things.
All right, folks, you heard it here. All of IT these days revolves around APIs. If you don't know how to manage or secure them, bad things are going to happen. Rak, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you, Mike. Thanks for having us.
All right, back to you guys in the studio.
This is Techstrong TV.
Hey guys, thanks for the throw. We're here with Andre Rodriguez, who's the CTO for Nasuni, and we're talking about data protection, ransomware, and cybersecurity, and all those good things that go along with it. Andre, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks for having me on the show.
We've been talking about this stuff forever, and it seems like we're not making as much progress as maybe we ought to be, because we're still having issues with ransomware. People seem to have a difficult time getting a pristine copy of their data back. So from your perspective, what's at the core of the issue, the problem, and what do we need to do about it going into the new year?
Well, in two words, recovery times. That is the one thing that everyone cares about and no one delivers. If you look at what people are sort of, the vendors are promoting, it's all about, your data is going to be safe, it's going to be protected. We're going to be able to detect the attacks or prevent the attacks in some magic manner. And really, it's impossible to anticipate and defend against every possible form of attack. What matters, though, is once you get hit, how quickly you can recover and you can bring your systems back online. And that should really be the focus of the discussions, and that should be the focus of how things are evaluated. And that should be the focus of the strategies for large companies that are dealing with the threat of ransomware.
So time is money, as always. So are people kind of hitting the stopwatch the minute they discover the attack, and then they're trying to figure out, well, how long will it take us to recover? And if that's too long, will they pay the ransomware then? And that's kind of what the mathematical equation is.
That's right. And that is exactly, that is the lever that these nefarious attackers are using. The reason ransomware works and is so effective is because no data is actually moved out of your system. The data is encrypted in place, which can be done very quickly and very quietly. And so what happens is, at the time when you figure out my files are encrypted and the only way to see them again is to get the keys from the attackers, you have to decide, okay, if I have to recover the data myself, how long is that going to take us versus if we just pay the ransomware? And, that time is exactly what the ransomware attackers are using as leverage over their victims. And therefore, it is the thing that you want to be able to unwind. You want to be able to, contract the time that it takes to go from, as you said, if you start a watch when you realize you've been attacked and you're still trying to assess how much damage there was, if you start a clock right there, how long before you have a perfectly pristine back to operations infrastructure? That's what matters. And if that time is measured in hours, you're going to go with your recovery systems. If that time is measured in weeks or months, you're going to pay the ransomware.
Do we need to modernize our data protection platforms? Because, in my experience, we've been at this for 4 or 5 decades now, and we've never really been exceptionally good at it. It's always been a little bit hit or miss. So do we need to kind of take a minute and say, hey, rather than just obsessing about what's the next greatest cybersecurity tool, let's just figure out what our data protection platform looks like today versus what it needs to look like tomorrow?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, if you look at it, backup is broken, especially when it comes to backing up large file footprints, which is where ransomware, has found its sweet spot. If you're a company that works with a lot of files, if you're a company that has a lot of file servers in a lot of locations, you are susceptible to ransomware. And if you're using best practices and the top, Gartner vendors for backup, for protecting those file servers, you are going to be susceptible to ransomware because the entire backup model for file servers is broken. And it all goes back to this question of time. In order to recover a file server, you have to be able to copy the data from your backup server back to your file servers to make that data operational again. That copy operation for files can take a very long time. It tends to be very quick if you're talking about databases or if you're talking about applications, because those are small footprints. But when you talk about files, you're typically, in the order of tens to hundreds of terabytes. And so that copy operation takes a really long time. If that's happening across many locations, across your infrastructure, it's even worse because now you're trying to draw that data back out to those sites where those file servers are sitting. What you have to do is you have to avoid the copying. And, we've been doing this in the cloud for years now, but it's still, a technology that's being adopted in the traditional kind of enterprise IT mentality, which is don't back up your file servers. Rely on the fact that because of the scale of the cloud, you can have an immutable version stream of your file server history, and you can at any point unwind history in a file server back to a healthy point in time before the ransomware attack, that is, and not have to do any copy. It's all within the file system. It's not like you're trying to bring the files from some backup server back into the production systems. The production system is able to self-heal and to do so internally without having to do any copy of data operations, which is what slows everything down.
It's also part of the challenge that the data types are much different these days. There's a lot more of them, and they tend to be a little bit larger. And I don't know if people have really thought through that before they started employing all these data types when they didn't look at the protection system.
Absolutely. I think two things made ransomware. I mean, like you said at the beginning of the interview, it's not only that we're still dealing with this, it's that it's gotten worse and worse. And the two things that I think made that happen was, the file servers got much bigger because of what you said. The files got bigger and there are more files, right? The entire workflow of companies now, if you're an engineering company, manufacturing company, legal firms, it's all digital and that's all files. And all those files are going on file servers. And, that makes the file servers really, really large. Global companies, again, have many, many sites around the world, which compounds the problem. So the footprint has gone, what they call the sort of attack surface is grown significantly. So there's more to attack than there was before. Couple that with cryptocurrencies, which I don't know if they're going to change the world of finance. Given the time when you and I are having this interview, it looks like there's a lot of imploding cryptocurrency. But one thing crypto has been very, very good for is ransomware attacks. Until the introduction of Bitcoin, there really wasn't a good way of monetizing ransomware attacks. Now there is, and there are sort of governments around the world who are nefarious as the attackers, and they are used as kind of laundromats for cryptocurrency to go into real money. And because of that, there's actually organized crime making hundreds of millions and billions of dollars on ransomware attack in systematic ways. And so the question has stopped being whether you're going to get attacked by ransomware. The question is, when is it going to happen? If your company has any level of public, profile, you will be attacked in time. And I think the difference between being attacked now and being attacked 5 years ago is 5 years ago, you could beg and plead to your board and your CEO and tell them, look, we were following best practices. We have the best vendors. We read all the Gartner reports, et cetera, et cetera. Now, that's not good enough. If you don't have a recovery plan and your company is down on its knees for weeks, or it has to pay ransomware, which is not only the money going out the door, but it's the potential damage to your brand, to your firm, if people find out about it, both because you have lax security processes because you weren't able to recover, and because you're basically paying terrorists, paying bad guys for something they've done to you. So if you're a brand, this is not something that you want happening to your infrastructure. And so I think the excuse of, sorry, backup takes a long time, that's all we can do, it's not good enough. That's going to get you very quickly into your next job, and it's likely not to be a move up. It's likely to be a move in the downward direction. So I think everyone should be looking at these new systems that don't depend on backup. Backup is broken. The backup vendors don't want to tell you that. The analysts that cover backup don't want to tell you that. But the ransomware attackers are sure going to make you aware of that. And you're going to have a really hard time explaining that you are reading the latest reports, following best practices when you're down for weeks or when you have to pay ransomware. So,
are you seeing cybersecurity people get more involved in the data protection conversation? Used to be, the lowest person on the IT totem pole was in charge, and now maybe the conversation has been elevated somewhat?
Definitely. And both, I can tell you, the cyber insurance practices, which most companies have now, demand that the conversation be elevated. So, cyber security, cyber resilience, which is the correct term for this, because it's not to say that detection and prevention are not important parts of the equation, but when it comes to files, and when it comes to ransomware and files, recovery time is the single most important variable in the equation. That discussion is gone from being sort of a discussion that was happening, like you said, in the low levels of kind of IT, the backup world. And now it's all the way up to at least the CIO level, then the compliance officers, the chief security officer. There's awareness all the way. I would argue that even at the board level, once you start getting cyber insurance, which I would recommend anyone do, they're going to come in and evaluate what your best practices are before they stamp the insurance. I'll tell you a great story, Mike. We had a bunch of clients. We do interviews on ransomware, and it's part of how we develop our roadmap. So we talk a lot to our customers about it. And one of my favorite stories was one of our clients was actually hit before they had Nasuni and couldn't recover. I'm sorry, and sort of they couldn't recover. But the important thing is they were hit, and then the ransomware that was asked was exactly their insurance policy. And what had happened is the attackers had actually compromised the insurance company, gotten the list of clients, a list of customers from them, and their policies, and were systematically attacking those companies and asking for the policy, amount for each of these customers. So this is how sophisticated these attackers are. These are well thought out, multi-month, multi-year plan attacks. And when they happen, you just have to be armed. You have to be ready to do this fast recovery. You can't just be at the mercy of being the next company in the list that they're systematically attacking and asking money from.
Do you think they've also gotten better at targeting the backup files themselves? And part of our issue is that when we go to recover, we discover that the malware is everywhere. So do we need to rethink that as well?
I think the problem is the backup process itself. Backup is a bad idea, especially when it comes to files. I mean, the whole idea of the backup premise was the primary system is not good enough to keep itself protected. It's a bad idea. It's kind of like saying, my door is not a very good door, so I'm going to give you another door that's actually a very good door. No, you just need to fortify your door, the primary door. And that's the issue. People feel more comfortable because now they have two systems. Two systems is two vectors of attack. Like you said, I can attack the backups, I can attack the primary. And most importantly, even if the backup is not compromised, it takes so long to get the data from the backup to the primary that is inconsequential. The backup could be pristine, but it's going to take you weeks to recover these very large file servers or these many around the world file servers. I mean, we've had clients that have had to stage multi-month recovery operations where you have to triage which offices are going to come back online first based on their importance. And you can bet that those offices that are sitting at the bottom of the triage, they are really angry with their IT department by the time it's, the second month and they still are not back in production.
All right. So you mentioned building a better door. What exactly does that look like and how hard is it to create that door?
It's one door, one system, so you can keep all your eyes on that one system. And that system has all the telemetry you need for doing early detection, for being able to, most importantly, every change in data that is made to that file system is actually kept in an audit trail, an immutable audit trail. And every single change to the files is actually also preserved in an immutable version stream of the files. And so when an attack comes in and you find out, so first of all, if you can detect it early on, awesome. You can prevent it from having any effect on your file systems. But if you miss that, it's okay, because now you have a perfect trail via the audit trail of every single file that was encrypted in your infrastructure. And now you can automatically tell the system, the one door, unwind all of these encrypted files to just before they were encrypted. Give me the latest version before the attack. And all of that happens in an instant. These are operations that if you have a version file system, you can perform in a matter of minutes versus taking weeks or months to do the recovery operation. Again, the focus is on that mean recovery time. That's the single most important variable. How long after I say, whoops, we've been attacked, does it take me to go from a compromised system to a system that is now back in production and all the files are visible and all the end users and applications can look at the files and see the file system as it was before the attack?
All right. So a lot of folks are probably going, don't we have that capability with operating systems? So what was the hard part about doing it at the file system level?
It's bigger, but you are exactly right. Operating systems have been able to do versioning and be able to unwind in very graceful ways for upgradability, reasons. It makes that much safer because if the upgrade fails, you can wind it back. operating systems are a very controlled environment. Operating systems are a very small environment. File servers across a large organization is a very big system. Scale, I've been doing files my whole career, and the difference between files and unstructured data in companies and everything else, it's scale. It's the scale of the problem. Every other system in a company, when every other system in a company is something that people are talking gigabytes, when you talk about file systems, you're talking terabytes. When you're talking terabytes on the other side, you're typically talking, petabytes on the file system side. And so that you have to be able to create a system that can do that versioning and that recovery at staggering levels of scale. And that is what the cloud file systems are all about. It's basically about handling not only the capacity of the file system, in a cost-effective manner, but the versioning of the file system, the recovery of the file systems. I mean, for most of our clients, their file systems are too big to back up. It's kind of like the banks, too big to fail. They're just too large. And by that, I mean that the windows for backup start getting too long. Imagine what the recovery times of a system like that would be under just the backup model, where I have to grab 500 terabytes from my backup server and bring those back to the file server. Anyone in IT will tell you that is an insanely long operation. That is the sort of operation that you fear to do, and that you typically get a partner, and it's a multi-month operation to do. So you want to avoid that. Because you get attacked by ransomware, you do not want to be copying, hundreds of terabytes from your backup to your file servers. You're going to be paying the ransomware. Because, if you look at the ransomware, it does exactly what a version file system does. Once you have the keys, you can just unwind the encryption without having to copy data. That's why it's so fast in the recovery. But if you have a version file system, you can do that recovery without having the encryption keys. You can just go back to the previous unencrypted version without having to copy data. Copying data is death for scale.
All right, folks, you heard it here. If you reached your backup system as your ransomware recovery strategy, perhaps it's far too late, and it's just a question of how screwed you really might be. Hey, Andre, thanks for being on the show.
Thanks, Mike.
All right, back to you guys in the studio.
DevOps.com is the #1 online destination for DevOps education and community building. DevOps.com covers all aspects of DevOps, including DevOps best practices and tools, DevOps culture, DevSecOps, business impact, continuous testing, continuous delivery, and more. DevOps.com has the largest collection of original DevOps content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.devops.com to learn more. DevOps.com, where the world meets DevOps.
This is Techstrong TV.
Hi, everyone. We're back here live in Vegas for the Qualys QSC show at the Venetian, wrapping up day 2. I think we have just 1 or 2 more people to come on here. But don't stick around for them. I think you'll enjoy what we're going to talk about. Excuse me. My next guest is Bharat Jodi. Bharat's been with us at previous QSCs and so forth, and we're happy to have him back. Bharat, first of all, welcome.
Thank you, Alan.
Thank you. Before we jump in, why don't we give people a little bit of kind of your background and what you do at Qualys?
Sure. So I've been with Qualys for 13 plus years, and I had the vulnerability and threat research at Qualys. So my team, we have a global team of security researchers. We look at the threat landscape, new vulnerabilities that get released on a daily basis, try to build countermeasures, detections for them. We also do our own in-house zero-day research. Some of the vulnerabilities, like we have fairly good luck finding like very critical vulnerabilities like PwnKit, Baron Semidit, Return of Wizards. Most of these vulnerabilities are exploited in the wild. So, yeah.
You know what they say about luck, though, right? 80% perspiration, 20% inspiration.
Yes, exactly. And yeah, it's a never-ending game. Like we have to
Yes, it
constantly.
is.
Vulnerabilities are not stopping. Hackers are exploiting new breaches. So it's a wild ride, but it's a good one.
You know what? I know sometimes it could feel like, are we ever making progress?
Yeah.
Right? Because as fast as we find them, that's how many more, for every one
Yes.
we find, 2 more come out. But the fact is, we are making progress.
Yes.
Right? And we have been, and we continue to. So thank you for all that you and your team do. We interviewed someone earlier. There's an announcement here at QSC about the True
Yeah.
team.
Yeah.
Just to, to let people know about True again.
Yes.
But what's the relationship there with your team and True?
Yeah, so we have a global security research team, and we have been producing some very quality research. And Qualys has been doing this for last 20 plus years. So we decided to basically give the research team a name. Like we have like top class researchers on the team, and we wanted these researchers to have their own identity. So all our research on vulnerability, threats, policy compliance, external attack surface, all of these come together as a part of one unit. We are calling it as Qualys Threat Research Unit, in short Qualys True, and that is something that we really stand by. Like if you look at Qualys research that we have produced, right, there are a lot of companies out there who do a lot of scary stories, figurines, and that is not something that we want to get ourselves associated with. We want to give our customers and the industry real insights that matter, and that is why the True name really stuck. And that was something that we all as a research team, this is something that we can stand by. We will provide real insights, how it affects you, and what are the actions that you can take in order to reduce your risk. So that is how the Qualys True, the Threat Research Unit, came into being.
Got it. Excellent. All right. Let's focus in. We were going to talk a little bit about Patch Tuesdays.
Okay.
And I thought we would start with this most recent Patch Tuesday.
Mm-hmm.
And then we'll look at Patch Tuesdays in general and sort of where we're going with them.
Yeah. So, Patch Tuesday is always interesting for me. I have been doing that for last 14 years. And every month, it's like some of those, I have a daughter, 2.5. We have subscribed her with a monthly subscription where we basically get new toys.
Mm-hmm.
So sort of Microsoft Patch Tuesday has become something like that. Every month you don't know what surprise are we going to receive. And this month's Patch Tuesday is no different. Keeping in terms of the number of vulnerabilities, just by the numbers, Microsoft fixed 68 vulnerabilities. 11 of them were rated critical.
That's actually low.
Yeah, exactly. This year, Microsoft is averaging 100 plus vulnerabilities. They already fixed 1,300 CVEs just in 2022. So 100, 110 average.
Right.
Compared to that, we are at 68.
Mm-hmm.
However, the interesting part is that Microsoft fixed 6 zero-day vulnerabilities with this Patch Tuesday. Now, that number is quite high. Generally, it would be around 1, 2, max I have seen around 4, but 6 in 1 month is quite high. So, yeah, I mean, in terms of number of 0 days squashed by Microsoft in this one, it's really high, 6. Good thing they released a patch for proxy not shell. Was a 0 days that were being exploited, were used for targeted attacks against Microsoft Exchange. And there are some other critical vulnerabilities that also Microsoft fixed.
Yeah, I feel obligated that I got to mention to our audience. We're talking about Microsoft Patch Tuesday. So these are only Microsoft vulnerabilities. It doesn't mean that Microsoft is inherently not secure or less secure than Apple or Linux or any of these others.
Yeah.
It just means that, Microsoft for the last, I don't know, it's got to be 15, 14 years,
Yeah.
has been releasing every month on time, Patch Tuesday,
Yeah.
where they address vulnerabilities within the Windows,
Yeah.
the whole Microsoft
products,
ecosystem, not just Windows. So I just want to say that we're not here banging Microsoft or trying to say they're more insecure than other systems. That's not it at all. Secondly, again, our audience is pretty technical, right? If you get 6 0 days coming out in a month, that's because there were probably 6 in the wild
Yes.
exploits out there for these 0
Yeah.
days, and they had to be fixed immediately.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, just another reason why we need to do a better job of automating remediation.
Yeah, obviously.
Right?
Yeah. I don't think, so earlier, I think yesterday at QSE, Salish was doing his presentation, and if you look at just Microsoft for this year, the patches they have released are more than 45,000.
Wow.
45,000 patches that you need to apply in order to fix all those Microsoft vulnerabilities. So, and with the rapid digital transformation, there is no way
How do you stay
can,
up on it?
No, exactly. There's no way. No. And today, when Travis announced one of the insights that he provided was the time to weaponize the vulnerabilities. From the time the vulnerability is out to the time attackers have used that vulnerability and weaponized exploits are available, that is down to less than 16 days. So if you don't have an automation in place to patch your vulnerabilities, you are giving attackers a quite wide window to attack your infrastructure. So automation is the key. I don't think there is anyone would deny that automation is not good. There is no way, how many vulnerabilities constantly on the rise. We are 21,000 CVEs just this year. We are not at the end of the year. So number of vulnerabilities are on the rise. Vulnerabilities like Log4j, Spring4Shell, Text4Shell, they are on the rise.
And there's going to be more. We just don't know when and where.
Exactly. And perfect. This is the time of the year when,
usually we get something right around now, around the holidays.
Yes. So
actually, it's a little early. Next month.
Yes. Yeah. After Thanksgiving to Christmas is when you'll see, SolarWinds, Log4j, everything happened around that time. So while automation is the key, there is no way. We need to fix as many as possible and as quickly as possible, because the weaponization time for these vulnerabilities has dropped significantly.
Absolutely. So, one of the reasons I started DevOps.com is I thought to myself, there has to be a better way.
Yeah.
And so the whole, what's become known as shift left.
Yes.
Right? My hope was that as more companies adopt that into their software development process, we would develop software that would be more secure by design, which would therefore mean we'd have less patching to do after deployment. Do you think maybe 2023 we reap the rewards of that, or we're kidding ourselves?
Yeah, I think organizations have realized that once something is in production, once something is live, it becomes very difficult. And after that, it's basically you are doing you are just trying to catch up. So as much as you can, fix things before they are in production, right? You have all the time, right? You don't have to worry about dependencies. It becomes easier. So the more we fix vulnerabilities at the developer side, at shift left side of things, the better.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But when do you think we'll see it in the numbers?
So I think obviously in 2023, 24, probably I think organizations would, will soon realize, especially, there is a lot of push in industry for SBOM, right?
Yes.
And that
Software,
is something
supply chain, SBOMs,
yeah.
all the rage.
So vendors, when they are trying to, you are working with vendors, beforehand when you are procuring something that this is the SBOM. It transparently lays out all the. If you know that a vendor is selling you a product which already has out of dated dependencies, etc., probably you are not going to deploy that in the environment. So this is going to basically put a lot of pressure on vendors as well, that they are inherently shipping you a secured product. So I am very hopeful. I think Jonathan mentioned about that we had a CISO panel discussion.
Yes, the CISO panel discussion.
So and I think SBOM was something that
Absolutely. Look, we have high hopes for it too. Anyway, Bharat.
This nice talking to you.
Thank you. Hey, we're wrapping up. You have one or two more coming at you here live from Vegas. We're going to take a break. We'll be back in just a minute.
This is Techstrong TV.
Hey everyone, we're back here. We're going to wrap up our day one coverage of Qualys QSC. It's been a great day. We've probably done, a dozen, maybe more interviews. Hope to give you a flavor of what goes on here. I just want to remind you all again, Qualys puts these on. It's open to anyone who wants to register. Probably too late to come on down to Vegas for this right now, but if you want to catch the next one, it's a great security conference. Because it's not just Qualys and the Qualys people, it's the people you meet here that you get a chance to interact with. It gives me a good lead into our next guest. His name's Nathan Rawlings. Nathan is with Elevant Health. Elevant Health. He's actually speaking tomorrow. And before we get into what he's speaking about, Nathan, first of all, say hello.
Hello.
Give people a little background on you.
Yeah, so I'm Nate Rawlings with Elevance Health, formerly Anthem, a whole health company with plans across Medicare, Medicaid, and commercial. We have 14 Anthem Blue Cross state plans.
Yes.
So, but we do a lot more as well. We do pharmacy, behavioral, specialty health, digital platforms, right? And so we've really, I don't want to say reinvented ourselves, but are working to take healthcare all the way to the communities in which we live. So my job's super important there because I'm the Senior Director of Vulnerability Management, Secure Configuration, and Cloud Security Posture Management.
Yep.
And so I take that very seriously because we're protecting the systems and data.
It's a serious job.
Right, that protect the folks in those communities. So glad to be here and looking forward to talking to them.
Thanks for that, Nate. And I'll tell you something, it's the kind of information you have. I mean, obviously there's HIPAA, people's personal health information.
Sure.
But there's also, there's trade information, right? There's, such sensitive kind of data. No one wants to be tomorrow's headline.
That's right.
Right?
Absolutely.
And so this is a job, right?
Yes, absolutely.
I've been in security 25, 30 years myself, man, right? And I started security companies, I've been in the industry.
You mean you're 30 years old, right?
Yeah, something like that. But, it's been a long, strange trip, as they say. But one of the kind of mythical beings, unicorns in security, was trying to show ROI.
Yeah, absolutely.
Man, I remember doing an ROI calculator for a company I started back in the early 2000s, of why vulnerability management, would provide ROI. And I can't tell you how many people laughed at us.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah, for sure.
You're talking about ROI security tomorrow. Why shouldn't we laugh at you?
And not just because I like unicorns, I guess, but because I think ROI, and when we look at it in just the security lens, it is difficult to quantify and explain and articulate. But when you look at it through the lens of your partner, right, we know that there's a finite number of hours in the day, and there's even less hours in the day that our friends in IT and the business are working, and an even smaller amount of time in which they're working to maintain those applications and systems, remediate vulnerabilities on those systems, patch, rehydrate images in the cloud. So if we can maximize the risk reduction for the hours that they spend on those activities, then we are improving the return on investment for the time they're investing in doing those things. So
I like that.
Yeah, so that's what we're focused on. And, you know, as part of the product advisory board and with the partnership we have with Qualys, that's a lot of our messaging. Is like, Qualys is my tool, and in terms of, when I say that's the royal my, because I've got a great team behind me. But it gives me the security insights that I need to understand the risks of the environment, but I have to think about the folks that are actually doing the work, doing the remedial activities, doing the corrective actions.
And their time is money, man.
It is exactly that, right? And so if I'm not thinking about that, then I'm not going to be able to reduce the amount of risk. Because at the end of the day, and you talked about sensitive data, things like HIPAA, PCI, and there was folks talking about it today, I don't get to mandate what my service level agreements are, right? But I do get to prioritize and the vulnerabilities and the actions and the security exposures that need to be fixed first so that we can reduce the amount of risk. And I do get to provide the information in a way that they can consume so they can be action-oriented in the way that they address them. So we've built that, and not through just that action, right? But it's the willingness to understand their perspective and drive that. So, and I want to tell you why we came to that, Alan. I came into the vulnerability management role at Elevance a couple years ago, right? It'll be 2 years in December. And I looked across the landscape and I was like, we got 18 subsidiaries and every cloud environment out, or CSP out there, and 7,000 applications. I'm like, boy, this is going to be a big job. How are we going to do it, right? And so, when I talk tomorrow, I'm not, contrary to the pleasing points of the Qualys folks, I'm not going to talk about how Qualys can solve all your problems, but I will tell them how we've used Qualys to solve some of our problems, right?
And I think that's the key, right? I just had a conversation with Dilip, who, the platform, he built the Qualys platform.
Absolutely.
I think that's the key to this whole thing. You can't expect Qualys or any other company to come by and say, poof, your security problems are gone, your vulnerabilities are done. At the end of the day, they're tools.
Absolutely.
The tools are only as a lesson I learned growing up. The tool makes the man, but they're only as good as the man or person, woman, person using them.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so just because you have Qualys or a Qualys-like thing doesn't magically mean your stuff went away. Now you got your work. At least you know what work it is.
That's absolutely right. So we were with the Qualys agent deploying that VMDR. So we were a long-time Qualys shop. Mm-hmm. Traditional network appliances, scanning at frequencies and downtime. We deployed agents to 95% of our systems, over 400,000 systems that could accept an agent. We now reduced vulnerability detection time by 4,200%, 42 times.
Wow.
So we're finding vulnerabilities every 4 hours on 95% of a Fortune 20 company's systems. We increased the time to communicate a vulnerability by 7 times. So on average, we're finding vulnerabilities and communicating them within ServiceNow and our other workflows within a day.
It's crazy.
It's crazy.
It's crazy. I think back to my days on the other side of this camera. Where the average mean time to remediate was 90 plus days. It's crazy. That was crazy.
Right?
That was crazy.
What is it?
What it's supposed to be.
That's right. And so we're still working on driving down that mean time to remediation, but really the whole concept of ROI came to me like, my guys are frustrated. We've deployed the agents. We're finding them fast. We've got a risk-based methodology that's best in class in the industry. We're communicating them through ServiceNow and working with ServiceNow to improve their platform. But we had to start, now we have to start looking at those other things that can drive down that mean time to remediation. If we look at it as a stack bar, mean time to detect, mean time to communicate, and then mean time to remediate, if I told you we're communicating our vulnerabilities in a day and an SLA is 30 days and you missed that SLA, what were you doing for 29 days?
That's what you got. That's what you got. So that brings up my pet peeve. Look, we've had companies touting automated remediation, automated patching, automated configuration, automated remediation where I'm changing network paths to, isolate certain kinds of traffic that could be, exploited and so forth. We've had this available in the industry long time, 15 plus years.
Absolutely.
There's a tremendous reluctance to move towards automation.
Yeah.
It's like, and you ask people why? And they're like, well, I don't want to break anything.
That's exactly.
Okay, better to be insecure, better to have this gaping hole over here
Right.
that someone's going to drive a truck through.
And I think that's about creating cyber awareness, Alan.
Yeah.
It's, what's funny, and if you do a little Socratic method with the folks and you say, okay, you don't want to deploy that patch because that system's critical and you need it, right? Well,
it gets taken down.
It's exactly right.
That's the whole thing. It's illogical.
Exactly. What's the larger risk? And, with the different means of deploying patches and, folks being able to do so in production, quickly roll back, we've got to bring, again, our partners in and show them that automated remediation is going to further increase the ROI for the time that they're spending. Right?
And that's a key piece of it. But in my mind, that's not a technology. The technology's there. I think Qualys has a great solution for it.
Absolutely.
I think that's more of a mindset.
I agree.
Needs to get changed.
I agree.
Sometimes changing mindsets is a lot harder than just building code.
I agree. And we all live in the Missouri state. The show me. Exactly. Yep. Right. And so I think we have to be able to demonstrate that and take a step back from the security practitioner lens and have a seat in their chair for a second and say, let me show you how our tools can help you. And we've talked a lot over the last couple of days. We get a lot of value out of the Qualys cybersecurity asset management capability. And guess who else gets a lot of value out of it? IT, our enterprise architecture groups, a lot of the folks that are looking for those same asset details and things like that. So let's bring them in, and just like I'm asking Qualys and the other technology providers to work with each other, integrate your tools to make better security posture for our entire environment, we need to be doing those same things within our organization.
Internally. And that's where the ROI really kicks in.
That's right. Better, right? We're better together.
You got it, man. Hey, Nate, it sounds like it's going to be a great session tomorrow.
I hope so.
Looking forward to it. But more importantly, man, keep fighting the good fight. It sounds like you're on your game, man.
We're trying to.
Elevant's in a good place with it.
I appreciate it.
All right. Hey, for people who want to get more information, it's elevanthealth.com?
elevanthealth.com.
Excellent. All right. Hey, that's going to wrap up day one here at Las Vegas. We will be back tomorrow, I think around 10:30 Pacific time. Check the live stream. Until then, hey, stay safe. Enjoy. We're out. Bye-bye.
Do you know what you want?
Can we afford this place?
I'm thinking 1,000-piece Kubernetes, cloud workload protection, and XDR combo.
Yeah, I actually don't see any prices.
Hello, how can I schedule a demo for you today?
So we're on a budget.
Okay.
How much is your 1,000-piece Kubernetes?
What solutions are you currently evaluating?
You don't have to order off that thing.
We don't?
How did you get in here? Check this out.
Uptick's secret dollar menu.
Order today and you can secure any combo of cloud and endpoint assets through the end of next year. All for $1.
What if I want to secure 100 Mac laptops and 900 Linux servers?
Yeah, $1. What if I want 500 laptops and 500 Kubernetes nodes? Just $1? Yep, mix and match to create the combo that works for you.
What about customer support?
Yep, everything for just $1. We're gonna order off the Uptick secret dollar menu. And seriously, how did you get in here?
Seriously.
Try the Uptick's combo of CNAP and XDR, delivered in a single UI and data model. Just $1 to secure your cloud, containers, and laptops through the end of next year. Offer ends December 31st.
Hi again, everyone. I hope you all enjoyed today's episode of Techstrong TV. We had some amazing interviews with a fantastic group of industry professionals to give you the latest and the greatest. And alongside our airings of the open mainframe and engineering the change, we had some great content today. We'll be back again tomorrow, so we hope to see you then. But in the meantime, thank you so much for watching, and hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. As always, stay strong. Tech strong.